I'm a bender.
Who the hell are you anyway?
I'm a bender.
I saved the whole of reality from you. I am
a bender. Call me the bender.
This is Zoe, Jamie, and I'm
a bender.
Might I suggest you just call me
a bender?
No, I'm the
bender.
Oh, please don't call me human. Just
B-E-N-D-E-R. Bender.
How do you do, sir?
I'm a bender.
Her name is Tegan, Your Majesty. This is Turlo, and I'm
a bender.
No, actually, I am known as
a bender.
Now that we're all here, let me introduce myself.
I'm a bender. I'm a bender.
And who are you?
What are you going to do with a bender?
Do you know what I see, Doctor?
A bender.
I walked in universes where the laws of physics were devised by the mind of
a bender.
Basically, run.
Damn you! Sutek gets filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Damn you, Sutek!
This show ain't no good.
Nice tits.
The BBC were ambitious. They always wanted the show to be bigger. They just believed in Doctor Who. It's an old, fantastic tradition. The BBC had plans to supersize it. And here we are. I absolutely agreed with everything they were planning.
RTD, you're lying to me. Every word you say is laced with tons of gay. You gotta keep lying, cause the show is dying. Protect the BBC.
There isn't an official Bible, and a lot of it's in my head. I do know the entire television history, so there's a lot of flexibility. But yes, I do have a list of not a list of rules. The timelines got mixed up, and I'm a little bit more diligent.
RTD, you're lying to me. Every word you say is laced with tons of gay. You gotta keep lying, cause the show is dying. Protect the BBC.
Their lead actor needs to be limitless. I want someone who's good at everything and describe, and we've absolutely got that with Shooty. It needs to feel very safe for a young audience to come and watch. There's a kind of childlikeness to the Doctor that fits children.
RTD, you're lying to me. Every word you say is laced with tons of gay. You gotta keep lying, cause the show is dying. Protect the BBC.
Start the car.
Yeah! Hello, it's WhoTF Live, and you are watching Will of the Fans. My name is Will, see what I did there, and it's that time again where we dissect and discuss all of the disgust, the dross, the dreck, and the occasional decency from Doctor Who. I am joined, as always, by my regular panel, well, something of my regular panel, Mr. Ryan Roger Athay, Mr. Golden Age Geek, and newly appointed to replace, we miss you, Rev.
Indeed.
Mr. Problematic White Guy, with our special guest, Mr. Price of Reason, and Mr. Dan Hadley. Ryan, would you like to say hello?
Well, hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and it's great to see you all watching today. Great to see John debut on this particular episode of Will's litany of great shows.
Indeed.
I have to say that after Saturday Night Hypnosis. I think I praised Hypnotic a bit too much.
He snubbed me. He totally snubbed me.
Yeah. You're on the redemption arc, as I understand,
For the record, while I have the mic, I forgot Price of Reason actually is a panelist, not a guest, so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Things are kind of fluid around here anyways. It's fine.
That's how I do things. Ryan, continue, please.
It's always a pleasure to be on this show, and it's great to see Dan here, a great guy, a fine fellow creator. Beyond Doctor Who, he's criminally underrated. Within Doctor Who, he's a force to be reckoned with. So hopefully we have a good talk about topics of the day related to Doctor Who, and have a little look through the blasts of the past back when I was a kiddo. I'm 25, and that is true. Now on to Goldie, who has really let himself go. God, AIDS will do that to you.
Who made that?
I'm not gay, Ryan.
Looks like he may have had some of that water of Mars already.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, hello everyone. Yeah, it's great to be here once again. Credit to 1-800-DANKY for making this brilliant avatar for me. I thought I would, put this on for today's episodes, since we're going through some scary episodes. And to address TJ Steve in the chat, what will my hot take be? Well, let's see. Twilight's a 10 out of 10, and Will's rankings of episodes are absolutely stupid. But yeah, let's forget about that. I'm glad to be here, and I'm sure we'll have a great conversation about Doctor Who news and the discussion of various episodes.
Yes, the never controversial Goldie. Thank you. Price of Reason, how are you?
I'm good. I just recovering a bit because we're going over Series 11 today, correct?
No. You missed the conversation. We are doing a different thing for October. I was going to announce it in a little bit, but I'll do it now. Fuck it. It's Spooktober, and even though I think Halloween is a worthless non-holiday, some people really like it. So we're going to dedicate this month to ranking the spookiest, scariest, most infamously terrifying, sometimes good, sometimes terrible episodes of Doctor Who.
I'm really relieved. That's like the best news I heard all day, because I actually I was
glad
kind
to
of
accommodate.
looking at the list of episodes, the first season with Jodie, and that made me miserable. I thought that Golden Age Geek looked like that because he had to watch those episodes or read about them.
No. We're waiting for November to do Jodie.
Oh,
all right.
Just thinking about those episodes makes me bilious.
Right.
You're welcome back to do that too, man.
You're right, fam.
Price, finish your intro, mate.
No, but the bottom line is that I didn't actually rewatch anything. I just looked at the list, and surprisingly, I remembered a lot of these terrible episodes. And I'm thinking, like what? I really thought to myself, like, this is going to be such a strange episode where we have to rank these. And you've just improved my mood. The spooky October thing is a welcome development. I don't know how I didn't realize it.
No, it's fine. I hate Halloween. I think it's a nothing holiday, but I'd rather do this than
there goes another garbage take from Will.
Oh no, man! Halloween's for like bitches and hoes, which my ex-wife was both of.
Oh,
she was also born on Halloween. That's the only reason I bring it up. So
but Price, did you finish your intro?
Yeah. No, I'm good. Basically, I'm happy you've improved my mood since I got here.
That's what I do, man. That's my whole purpose in life. And next up, we have Mr. Problematic White Guy, aka John. How you doing, man?
Oh, awesome as always. I actually did get the time to review the movies, or not movies, but the episodes that we're going to be talking about today. It's probably been close to a decade since I've watched either one of them, but it was a nice, like, little refresher. On when Doctor Who was good. And
well, it was actually you that suggested both of these episodes.
Well,
so, I mean, Blink was kind of a foregone conclusion to introduce. But Waters of Mars, that's a bit of a tangent, and we'll go there. That's fine. I like it.
Indeed. It's definitely like Waters of Mars. I mean, we'll get into it when we do, but it's like it's good and bad. But I'll explain kind of my reasoning on that, like when we get around to it.
I expect we all will. I watched it earlier on, so yeah.
But yeah, no, things are good. I'm gonna be on again later today with Ryan on the debut of Old White Road, reality based variant. And then other than that, like just been a kind of low key, lazy Sunday so far. So no complaints. I mean, it's only I guess it's 8 a.m. here in my time zone now, but it's kind of dark out. kind of.
Well, it's 9:10 at night where I am, which is kind of crazy considering that in America this is a morning show. In England, it's a mid-afternoon Sunday kind of post-pub free for all.
Well, it's odd enough. Is like actually like most of my streams are like this early morning kind of thing, which is kind of a good thing. Like my problematic white guy, he's always got a cup of coffee in his hand, which I've become basically like, all my shows are coffee shows because I'm just like, it's morning.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling to communicate with Will sometimes. You have to kind of make sure, you're still in reality because you'll be in the day, right? And he's messaging you and he'll be like, right, I'm about to go to bed, good night. And you're like, what do you mean? It's just gone 1 p.m. And then you're like, oh no, he's in a different time zone. Yeah. And then you'll be about to go to sleep and he's like, oh, this is a good morning. Morning, what the hell do you mean?
It's a truly international show, ladies and gentlemen. And this is globalism done right.
Yes, this is exactly globalism done right.
Never mind WEF when you've got WTF. Well,
that's right. Yeah, it is, man. Well, it should be WOTF, but I figure the O is like is nothing.
Yeah, but it's a small word. Like
there it is. It's just nothing. Yeah. It's just a red light in the middle.
If an O is nothing, you're doing it wrong. But apart from that, I agree.
Oh, there it is. Right. Okay. So before we waste any more time, allow me to introduce our guest for this morning, evening, afternoon, whatever fucking time zone you're in. It's Mr. Dan Hadley. How you doing, sir?
Fabulous. Yeah, it is mid-afternoon for me, so it's not the kind. I think I'm in reasonably good voice, even though everybody's got a bug in Britain at the moment. So, Will, you're well out of it, mate. But yeah, I'm great. Thank you. I'm always keen, always relatively eager to talk about Doctor Who, particularly when I know it's not the Jodie Whittaker era. So thank you for that. Whoever decided that late in the day.
I think it was actually
I feel like I got a stay of execution.
Yeah. It felt like, that's what it actually feels like. It feels like we have been sort of gradually working our way through the modern era from Eccleston all the way up to the regeneration of Peter Capaldi. And I just sort of feel like none of us could face it. So when Goldie had another idea that we go with the steer onto Halloween Boulevard, and review some great and some even not so great spooky episodes.
I have to say, I'm with you on Halloween, Will. Generally, I'm with you on Halloween, Will, as a holiday. I do think it's a non-thing, but a lot of people have a lot of fun with it, and spooky stuff in Doctor Who is always fun to talk about, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah, and that's a great idea. So I was like, you know what? You sold me at let's do something else.
I guess it gives me time to get caught up on the Jodie era, because I honestly have never watched it.
It gives me a little time to review as well.
I'm going to have
to. Caught up. It's like getting caught up with dysentery.
I was going to be painful because I never watched the entire series. I avoided it like the plague after The Woman Who Fell to Earth. So I'm going to actually have to sit and fucking watch this shit show for the next few weeks in between episodes of this. But in the meantime, we can have some fun. I'd like to say hello to a couple of people in the chat. I can see Divining Dragon is here, Dramatical Law is here, Mad Old Crow is here as well. We've got T-Jab Steve, of course, and Eris Rhoda. Those are the mods. So shout out to you guys. If you would like to join the conversation, just ping us a super chat. We'll be very happy to crack on and talk to you guys at any time that you have something you think is interesting enough to tell us about. And of course, don't forget you can join the Grift Force. Memberships are like £1.60 or something stupid like that, so it's really not very hard. You get emojis and a ticket to the members stream at the end of the month. So that's my shilling done for the foreseeable future. We have a little bit of news that it's become clear we have to talk about before we can get into reviewing these pair of episodes, and that of course is Shooty did you know he's gay twaz? Did you know he said that there's a third series? Because apparently there is some confusion over whether or not this actually happened or not. The BBC seemed to have edited out a segment from the Graham Norton show, which people were preparing themselves for before it happened, where Shooty Gatwa would announce the existence of his casting in a third series. And
Shooty Gay Twat.
Yes, it's Shooty Gay Twats. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I can only say that after so many minutes, Anyway, So we have an article from DoctorWhoTV.co.uk, which has been...
Now, I, for one, am proud of myself because I did a video on this article at 3 a.m. this morning and I managed to get the video out, and which is uncommon for me because I usually catch up on the news 5 days after Will does a video.
Yeah, I've been quite the grifter for Doctor Who for some months, but I decided to give it a little bit of a rest, let the news build up, and also Gamergate 2 has been kicking my ass with the amount of complete and total breakdowns that have been happening in the gaming industry. So I thought, nothing big's going to happen with Doctor Who for a while, and then this dickhead comes out and announces a 3rd season, and I already had my videos for the week done, so bollocks. But yeah, what do you guys think? So it seems Gatwa was people were talking about this before it actually happened. They were saying Gat was going to announce a 3rd series. I don't know how that happened. If anybody has any info on that, I'd love to hear it. But then he comes out on Graham Norton and it says he's going to do a 3rd series. And then
the speculation, Will, happens because it's Doctor Who. And what we find is that a lot of that sort of stuff is that people get convinced that he's going to do this, he's going to announce that, he's going to say that, or whatever. People sort of get invested in that before the fact because they're hungry for not just more information, but any information at all, because we're in the middle of probably the quietest spell in Doctor Who for about 18 months to 2 years. So that's a great part of it. And it's largely driven by activity on social media platforms, particularly X. So all of that pre-match stuff is just bollocks. People getting sort of jump happy, wanting to take the leap, making assumptions, and then almost sort of willing it into existence. Will, that's what that is.
That's what I assumed it was, but I also missed like a few days of the Twitter chat about Doctor Who, and so I thought maybe there'd been like a leak or something, but I honestly don't know.
It does happen. It does happen with these shows because they record, as people probably know. I think everybody knows that by now this week, but it's not common knowledge. This and the Jonathan Ross show are both recorded the night before they're transmitted. So Ross, when his is in season, it goes out on Saturday. They record it on the Friday, and with Norton, it goes out on Friday. They record it Thursday. And so when you've got a live audience, people talk. 24 hours is a long time when everybody's got a social media platform.
I mean, I will agree with Dan on that because, and I don't really agree with Russell on too many things, but I will agree with him on this. After Wild Blue Yonder went out, he did a video saying that, loads of people on social media were saying that Matt Smith was going to return and that the ghost of William Hartnell was going to appear in this episode. And I do agree that sometimes people do overhype things. Now, it's a good thing to do in some cases because you're showing interest in the show and you're trying, and you're doing that and you're creating interest. But sometimes I think people can set their expectations a bit too high, or they can get a bit, over themselves in terms of their expectations.
Yeah, very much so, especially like in recent years with RTD's kind of TDS addled brain and everything is kind of...
Russell doesn't understand social media, but which is fine. A lot of people don't understand social media, particularly people in their early to mid 60s. That's fine. But the problem is not understanding it is fine, but he thinks that he does, which is which is where some of the problems concerning the show, around the show, coming from at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's one of those people who is too old to have lived his whole life on social media, and yet the people who seem to be cheering for him are like 2 generations beyond him, and so he can't really communicate with them, but he thinks he is. And it's just the same exact thing which happens when you decide to start pandering to movements you don't fully understand. He's like, okay, I'm a gay man. Oh, okay, I'm a gay man. I should probably be with these people and then give them a gay doctor. Of course I should. But why aren't they watching? Because they're watching TikTok.
And if you take that fact, it kind of explains why I ironically really like Dot and Bubble, because I think all the characters in that episode are kind of all the people Russell hangs around with in terms of how they speak over the internet to people. So it kind of proves that that's the reason why that happened, because
it's frightening.
He doesn't really have a sense of awareness about the space of social media, so he doesn't really understand, how different people operate on there. So he's kind of written something which showcases him.
Goldie, he's kind of told if he's not told on himself, he's kind of told on the collective in many respects. Whereas publicly, he's very, very dogmatic. And I believe that he's completely behind the times and totally ideologically captured by all this stuff. But in exploring a story and taking it in its natural, to the place where it would naturally go, he really told on the movement then of the people who he aligns with and that align with him whenever they get together for those some nauseating backslapping bashes at the BBC or wherever else, some other bunker.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so he's trying to speak to an audience that's completely beyond him. He thinks he can understand, but he can't. And it's a different audience. He seems to think of this maybe still 2005. And at the same time, his brain is now far more addled by leftism and the pride shit and everything that's happened with that. But at the same time, he's also, trying to speak to them, but he doesn't understand that he doesn't have what it takes culturally to be able to communicate with them. So it's just a dead end for him. And so he's got Ncuti Gatwa and he's like, oh, this will speak to the people. But then what happens? You get the lowest ratings you've ever had in the entire series' history. On television.
And the problem with the guy to our right here is that he's little more than Russell's puppy. He's like a puppy that he's adopted from some shelter or another. He throws him a bone now and again. He pats him on the head, tells him he looks nice in whatever skirt that he's wearing.
Specifically, gorgeous darling.
In effect, and that's not necessarily Ncuti's fault, but I think he is being treated exactly as you just said, as some sort of purse puppy, as a performing seal. So he goes on these shows and does what starry people do, flashes the smile and says the stuff and laughs along with stuff that he probably doesn't really understand. Flatters Graham Norton's ego. That's very much part of the deal. But of course, when they get asked questions, that's where that's obviously a bit of a minefield, because if it's a question that they know nothing about, obviously that's great for us, for people who want to commentate on this stuff. But when it's something that we're hanging on every word for, and they don't say much, but they say enough, that's how we end up in situations like this.
Yeah, someone here isn't speaking to the other side. Ncuti either knows and can't say, or doesn't know and definitely can't say, but he said something. And I do think he's RTD's pet to some extent. He's looking for a Hollywood that doesn't exist anymore. He's looking for a system that he was probably promised after having come to the UK and been raised and decided that he can push all the levers and push all the buttons, blah blah blah. Oh, I'm gay, I'm black, I'm non-binary, whatever that means. Now hire me, Hollywood. And then he sort of discovers that not only is Doctor Who failing, but Hollywood itself is failing, Disney is failing, and so he has absolutely no raft to climb
And
onto.
Will, have you noticed there's a distance between Gatwa and Russell T Davies that was never there between Russell and Tennant, and even Russell and Eccleston, even though they weren't working together that long, it was actually quite close. With this, whenever I see a picture of them slapping one another on the back, I think, oh, this is very, very little. And the bigger their smiles get. I mean, the stuff at Comic-Con earlier in the summer, that was really quite awkward to watch.
There were pictures of RTD working with David Tennant, pictures of him working with Eccleston. There weren't many, but you could find them if you were looking. And there's no pictures of any real camaraderie with him and Gatwa, just the I've got my hand on your face, darling smile.
In fact, the sources that are speaking to me, and there are increasingly more, which tells you all you need to know about any workplace, the people that are speaking to me are saying how tension is in the air literally everywhere between every quota, including between the star and the showrunner.
I would say that you'd have to keep in mind with this dynamic specifically is it's a couple of mean girls that are, palling around on the surface, but, they're both catty bitches, obviously. And which is really weird because RTD, like 20 years ago, he wrote Queer as Folk and all this other stuff. And he had his shit together enough to just kind of be like, well, my personal life is my personal life. And the written word that I do for what I work on is not that, but now he's so caught up in his personal delusions for whatever reason, this late stage in life, he's 60 going on 13, and
he's turned into an old woman, just like in
I wouldn't describe him as bitchy, but I do think he's intransigent, and when you're in a position like this.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, and if you watch those Comic-Con panels, right, and all the interviews that Russell and Shooty do together, Shooty's always looking at Russell as if to like ask permission of, oh, can I say that? Or can I elaborate on that? So there seems to be, there's not really a lot of familiarity between the two. There does seem to be a little barrier in their communication.
Like a master and slave relationship.
I think that back in the day, Russell T Davies had actually something he needed to prove. Nobody hired him because he liked certain agendas. He was actually hired because he needed to perform a certain duty. And I think that he was in the right mindset. He was younger and he understood what his job is. This whole return is him struggling to stay relevant in his older age, desperately.
Well, there's a hunger. There's a hunger that comes with that when you're on your way somewhere, in any career, in any endeavor. He had the hunger. He doesn't have that anymore, and you can tell that in his work. You can even tell that in his work outside of Doctor Who. You know, I'm a big fan.
The interesting thing is it's happened late in life for RTD, but for Shooty, like all he's known is kind of just being platformed, and so like he's got no actual basis on ever having been good or earned anything.
Anyone who they mention their social media following before their list of actual credits, you know that something's wrong there.
This guy knows. Yes, you never, ever listen to anyone who values their social media followers more than their actual work achievements. That is something that will never change no matter how old the world fucking gets. But so on an appearance on the Graham Norton show, Gatwa basically was rumored and much backed by the shills and the stands and, the Mr. Retarduses of the world to be about to mention something of a third series. Now, this, of course, is a massive point of contention because we know that season 1, 14 or 40, depending on your era, was a total shit show. It was the most unwatched series of Doctor Who that's ever been broadcast on the BBC. And based on some big number crunching that I did based on lots of different websites and streaming platforms, it was definitely not breaking more than 5 figures on Disney Plus. So it's a shit show that cost, what was it, $100 million from Disney, and it is very unlikely that even Disney, especially with the scrutiny on Bob Iger these days, is about to turn around and finance a third series. We know series 2 exists because it was part of the deal. We know they shot it already. We've seen bits of it. We know it's coming. It's inevitable now, and I'm going to have to fucking review it for all of my fine audience members to whom I pledged that I would. But the third series has very much been a Schrodinger's asshole for quite a while, and we were really hoping it wasn't going to happen and that we could all just, start mourning as we should.
The best thing that could happen is Disney second guesses themselves and just tries to sell it to someone else to actually fix.
So here's the thing, right? This is the thing. I want to know what you think about this, because originally on Graham Norton, Gatwa apparently said, quote, "It's all going well. We did the second series this year. The Christmas special is coming up and we're filming a third series next year," which is what he was rumored to have said before the episode broadcast. So we can pretty much guarantee that that's true for our purposes anyway. Why would anyone lie about it? But in the final broadcast version of the interview, Gatwa said, "It's all going well. We finished the second season earlier this year. We've got the Christmas episode coming out at Christmas, but it's been amazing." So that means that the BBC have edited out Gatwa's declaration of a third series happening. What do we think, gentlemen?
Well, here's what I think about this, and I think it's kind of more simple than people are sort of letting on. I think what it is that Shooty is just under the assumption that it is going to get renewed. So he's saying, without saying the plans, he's effectively saying the plans.
Before that, he was at Comic-Con and he was answering a question about that, and he looked at Russell very nervously before he answered the question. So was he ever that confident? Do you really think so?
I don't think he was confident about what it was within his role to say, to admit, to disclose, and to announce on such a large platform. This is slightly different.
I have an idea.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Shooty, think he was really that confident? Yeah.
No, yeah, what I'm saying is that Ncuti is saying this, that they're filming the 3rd season next year because he's under the assumption that it is going to get renewed. And the plan, if it does get renewed, will be that they start filming it next year. And then obviously the BBC, for whatever reason, maybe there's some legal reasons, or perhaps it's just because they don't have the confidence. They're saying, right, let's just cut that bit out because we don't want it in the minds of the public.
I think there's a few reasons why this is happening. First of all, don't forget that there were interviews initially where he said he didn't know what he would be doing in a year. This is a while back. He didn't know what he would be doing a year from now, implying that he wasn't sure what's going to happen. And a lot of people like us were commenting on it and explaining that that's not a good sign when your star feels like he's about to stop making the show. So maybe somebody told him stop saying that. The other thing is that if they put out there that there's a potential 3rd season, even if it's cut from the show, the fact that we're even talking about it now and maybe some newspapers report on it later, when they don't go through with it, you'll have those type of activists saying, oh, there was already planned for a 3rd season, but because he's gay black man, they didn't want to do it. And then maybe they'll be able to rally some type of activists for their cause. I don't know that they will, but I think that that's what Russell T Davies is thinking.
Well, I think there's also the aspect too that, as you mentioned, season 1, as they call it, which is perfectly fine with me because this is Dictor Who, because it was like he was born out of Tennant's junks. So
I like that. How did I never think of that? What the hell?
But like they're 1 season down that was an abysmal failure. I'm pretty sure this directive is probably, if it's not BBC just saying let's have some diligence here and actually not get presumptive. Let's either cut this ourselves, or the directive might have come from Disney. It oddly enough, because Disney.
It won't have come from Disney. It won't have come from Disney.
So the point I'm getting at is Disney's got Agony All Along is completely a failure right now. They're filming more for Snow White, which is going to be a failure as well. They've got a whole bunch of failures lined up, and this 2nd season, nobody's excited.
This will be nothing to do with Disney. This is this statement. The setup between them. They own Marvel Studios. They don't own Bad Wolf. They certainly don't own the BBC. They don't own Doctor Who. It's a completely different setup. This will have been completely in-house within the various arms of the BBC. Things that they are allowed to admit contractually for one of several reasons.
Right.
There's no way they'll allow
what's the ownership structure then exactly? Is Disney just the distributor now then?
It's a 3-way alliance. Yeah, it's a 3-way alliance. That's why I call it Disney Who, because without Disney and the backup of Bad Wolf, which is now owned by Sony, without their assistance, Doctor Who would have been cancelled by the BBC after the disaster.
Yeah, they were going.
Sony have far more say. They bought Bad Wolf nearly 2 years ago. Everybody always forgets about this. Sony have far more of a say in the commissioning of it. Disney will not be the casting vote as to whether Doctor Who gets recommissioned or not, either this time or the next time. The BBC commissions Doctor Who. BBC Studios.
That is good to know.
From Bad Wolf, and my information told me again. I know this got me into some hot water out there. Doctor Who was recommissioned in July for season 3. I was told this by sources I trust, and I'm still standing by it, everybody. Certain things have changed. There are other creases.
Is that going to be Tennant?
There are other creases in it. Well, why would it be Tennant? What's Tennant got to do with it?
He's still alive.
He's still alive.
No,
they went and they did the bifabrication thing where
in continuity there's still another. No, but David Tennant is not the lead of this show. Shooter Gatwa is. Shooter Gatwa is the incumbent lead of the show, the same way Capaldi was, the same way Matt Smith was. It's the same lineage completely.
But Dan, do you think? But I was going to say, Dan, do you think that, say, the next season, when it comes out, the ratings are absolutely awful, even worse than the ratings we've just had, which, nearly half the episodes are the lowest rated in the show's history. Do you think if they are absolutely abysmal, like 1 million or below 1 million, they'll say, right, we need to stop these plans, we're not going to recommission it?
Yeah.
There's always a point with any production, any industry, anything that's being produced. Nothing's ever completely set in stone as to how something may carry on. A plug can be pulled by anyone at any time. It's just some people have got bigger plugs than others. Some people are more links of the chain, if you like, to yank it out of its socket. So obviously they could cancel this later in the day, but as you said there, Will, Ncuti Gatwa, he believes what he said on this recording. He, to the best of his knowledge, he's recording a 3rd season of Doctor Who next year. He clearly believes that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got to
clearly
be there
been
for
given, I'd say, more confidence in that than he had at Comic-Con when he
exactly. We're several months on from that now. He was speaking publicly in a room full of people on a show that the Graham Norton show's been on for a long time. He knows that this is a big deal. It's a major show, so he wasn't speaking out of turn in any way. And the people I was contacted by somebody who was at the recording of the Graham Norton show, and I was live myself doing my show, and I got back to my social medias, and there was a message from somebody who was there saying, "Oh, he's just said this, he's just said that," and so there's that. The most natural thing in the world. There was no kind of shush about it. It was assumed that it would be there on the show the next night. So Ncuti believes everything that he said, but what we've got to remember is that Ncuti's not there as an individual on that show. You know, this is why actors have personas and stage names and things like that. He's there as a representative of Ncuti Gatwa. He will have said what he said. No, of course not. And so what he will have said, for example, for him to speak in that way, it won't be a case of, Russell dropped me a text or whatever. It will be, Ncuti will have been professionally engaged through his agent by Bad Wolf for whichever production period that the series is going to take, whichever course.
I remember
just has an option, but they have to still exercise the option.
They've got
him for 3 seasons anyway.
But the 3rd season doesn't mean that he's going to make it all the way through the 3rd season.
Right, a lot of times
it could just be a regeneration, and then it's a completely different Doctor. So I mean, even in that instance,
I think it's him, isn't it?
No, a lot of times what they do is they go to an actor and they say, okay, here's a deal for 3 seasons. But the catch is it's sort of an option for 3 seasons. So if the 1st season goes well, they keep him. The 2nd season goes well, they keep him. But that doesn't mean that they're obligated to keep him. They could, after 2 seasons, tell him to go.
Well, Ncuti was engaged for 3 seasons. They have an option on him for a 4th. Generally speaking, if somebody quits if somebody's there for half a season of something, it's usually because they've been re-engaged. And this is whether they're a lead, a second lead, or a recurring character. It happened on Primeval several years ago with an actor called Douglas Henshaw, who he just didn't want to do it anymore. And they said, well, can you come back and do the first couple? Because we want to explain why you're not there. And they, sometimes actors, because again, an actor is only the public face of a situation. The agents, they get like 30% of, so if their agent says, look, mate, you can't, this is not cost effective. It's not for you to be there to do that episode or 2 of that to finish off that nicely. I want you working for Netflix, recording that in that block. So no, you can't go back and do a spit and a cough for a fortnight on a show on a job that you've already left. So to them, it's a job of work. It's that simple. It's only when it gets out into the public and we see it and we sort of jump on every word and there's people clapping on the Graham Norton show and sort of polishing up his ego for him. That's when things get very, very starry and very seductive. But the truth of it is actually annoyingly boring. It's little more than administration and people signing the right bits of paper at the right time in the right order.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember when I used to work.
What I'm trying to say is that sometimes when they sign an actor for 3 seasons, there could still be a clause that between the seasons they could theoretically dump him. At least
plugs can be pulled at any time.
They reserve the right usually to be
right. They receive not
gross misconduct. There can be any one of a number of things.
Right.
Yeah, he's the talent. He is,
he doesn't get to write the stories. He doesn't do any of the decision making.
As long as the contract stands, he can't void the contract. They can. It's their contract.
And so in his mind, as long as he never filmed a regeneration scene in season 2, then he's gonna have to be there for a 3rd season if there is one. Yeah. Unless they just up and cancel it and say no, this is done, and we're
well, I guess you can assume based on what he said on Graham Norton that he's not regenerating in the 2nd series.
Right.
Just to tie this one off, because I know it's obviously it's all conjecture at this point. Some of us much more informed than others. What's your opinion on a 3rd season of this shiz? how are you going to react? Because personally, I'm in till it dies. I'm going to review every episode of this shit show until it is literally RIP. I've pledged to do that. My audience knows I will do it. My dad's on board with me to suffer alongside me and argue the task.
Will, you sound like somebody who's going to do like a sponsored marathon or something like that. I'm going to go for it. My family are behind me. I'm going to do it.
It's awful. It's fucking awful to watch this, man. But yeah, no, like honestly, I'm gonna keep going with this. I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers who says he watched it and didn't. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to review it. And honestly, give me a third season. Fine. Okay, it's going to be trash, but at least I know that I can stop 8,000 people from watching it. So
it's hard to make too many big declarations about a third season that hasn't finished writing yet, and when we haven't seen the sort of the middle part. The series is in a really strange situation at the moment editorially, because they have got this. They finished filming season 2 6 months ago, and no matter what they say, Russell, and it's a miracle that Russell admitted this. Russell knows that did not go down very well. That wherever you laid that turd, it's going to stink. He knows. He saw the reaction internationally to the show. They've got all this period in between. They will be revising season 2 in some way where they can, and it wouldn't even surprise me if they're not pickups at some point. Whenever Shooter becomes free, whenever he's free from the importance of being earnest, is until January, I think. So even that's
they
not
already
out of the
recast the companion chick who, you know, like she was blonde white girl, and now it's going to be some Indian lady.
They haven't recast Ruby. They've just got a different companion.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that she was recast, but you know what I'm saying is, you know,
pushed her aside.
They are making a switch up on that already. So I mean, like they're already showing that they're making.
Yeah, that was a case of having to as well. Allegedly, I mean, it's several sources have told me, that the stuff Millie Gibson was the option was not picked up to continue it for a second season because of the actress's alleged conduct, a lack of professionalism on Gibson's part. So it's a combination of things.
Well, she was playing,
which is shocking to hear, because Ruby is by far the best thing about that bloody season.
Ironically,
that's weird. I was so very hesitant to say, you know what, I actually like Millie Gibson in this show, and I think
she's great.
Little by little, people came around to it. At first, it was like, "How dare you like anything about this show?" And then it was like, you know what, that was actually good.
She was the only good thing there for sure.
She's good in 73 yards.
I mean, you believe that she is who she's telling us that she is, which is more than can be said for Shooty, sadly, currently.
Well, you know, that's the thing, though, is even when you're stuck in jail, like you have to find highlights to your day, you know, like
exactly right. She's
so,
the
there's always something
IP
good to find if you're, you know, not completely pessimistic.
Yeah. No,
well, I mean, I'm not going to say that she's the best. I'm not going to say she's a good thing out of. Well, she's a good character in a bad series. I'm going to say that she is legitimately, if you take her away from this season, she is a very good character who I wish. Well, we don't know what role she's going to play in the second season, but I hope that she does get developed and some of her backstory is refined a little bit, because I do think she is legitimately a very good character.
Because they sure as fuck didn't answer several questions about Ruby Sunday in Series 1, 14 or 40. So we need something in Series 2, 15 or 41, because there was bugger all. So
I think they'll kill her off because of her alleged lack of professionalism. Okay, then. Well, you're not being professional. While
I believe there will be a death. There will be quite a major death as part of season 2 late in the season, but it won't be Ruby Sunday.
I don't think it will be Ruby Sunday, because she's the anchor for the series. Like without her, I have absolutely no idea who this fucking doctor is.
She's the mystery box.
Like literally, he's nothing at this point. His whole plot was, I do this, I do that, I am gay, I'm going to leave you to go and get potentially killed while I chase this guy into his fucking spaceship and try and bang him to Kylie Minogue for
exactly.
We've
seen three different characters. Effectively, Shooty's played 3 different characters, and that's why none of us can get a grasp of him.
Yeah,
if you removed
he doesn't even have a concrete costume. Sorry, go on.
I was saying that if you removed Millie Gibson from here, and let's say you go instead of Bill Potts and you throw her together with Capaldi, I could see her as a legitimate companion. And that's what I felt watching, that I thought, like, she is a legitimate Doctor Who companion. There's just nothing else around her that resembles Doctor Who.
Right.
Yeah, because she was... in that season, she's treated more as a plot device than an actual character. Everything about her isn't, right, let's get to know her a bit more. It's the sense of, let's get to know all the things around her, such as, you know, who's her mother, who's you know, and all the other stuff. She wasn't treated as an actual character, like...
Right.
Yeah,
She's
she
just
was...
a
It felt,
slightly
she felt
chubby
like
chick.
another... Yeah, in that season, she feels like another Clara Oswald. Like, I'm going to keep her around so I can learn more. And if there's some mystery here, then I'm going to, you know, discover what's behind it. It wasn't the sense of, right, this is Ruby, my companion. I love traveling with her.
Yeah, but you look at Matt Smith when he first met Clara, and he was genuinely perplexed by her existence. Whereas Gat was like, "Oh yeah, you're a bit of a conundrum, aren't you? Let's go show you every stupid place we can possibly visit that breaks, you know, the actual history of man." For fuck's sake!
It was a well fumbled ball, wasn't it? Every single pass was badly handled.
You're correct, absolutely. In fact, if it was a football game, it would be like 9-0 or 0-9, depending on you which team you're rooting for. Personally, I'm rooting for the team that's bringing
the 10 lowest rated episodes of Doctor Who. 8 of them are Judy Gatwa, and there's 8 episodes that he's done. So I mean,
I think it's all-time top 20. They were all in there. Yeah.
I mean, I do cut them a little slack with the ratings because the landscape has changed so drastically. And Doctor Who itself has moved weeknight again. It's been off screen for a long. There are some kernels of truth in all of the excuses that they make, but where we know that obfuscation is happening, where we know that they're being disingenuous, when you know that they know that we know it's not sticking, is the disappearance. Has anybody seen the AAI figures? I'm still looking. They've not been published. That's where the real gold is. And they're happy for us to be distracted by the ratings, because the truth of the matter is that there is some truth to the fact that the landscape has drastically changed. So they can always throw us that ball, and we can argue about that amongst ourselves. The real truth of this is, where the hell are those AAI figures? What are the audience? What are the people who've actually watched this stuff? The people who cared enough to be there? What do they really think? They don't want us knowing that. That is where the real gold is.
It could be that they don't have enough viewer data because there's not enough viewers to extrapolate it.
Well,
and you know, the thing is, right?
Could
When Series 10 was on the air with Peter Capaldi, the lowest episode in terms of viewing figures on broadcast was The Eaters of Light with 4.73 million. If they had just stayed the course and not tried all these fucking experiments with social justice and feminism and all of that, they'd still probably be maybe 4 million, maybe 3.5 million. At worst, they certainly wouldn't be experiencing the kind of numbers that they're getting now, because they just kept rocking the damn boat.
Yeah,
it's
well, I agree to some extent with Dan that the landscape has changed, but at the end of the day, I don't think you can put all of that down to it. I think the show, it is in a very terrible situation. I mean, you look at a show like The Penguin, right? No one was interested in that, but after word of mouth got around, this is actually a really good show. You know, there are many different means in which it's distributed. It's actually televised. You have the streaming. It's all different times around the world.
People will make time.
They love it.
People will make time for good material. People will go and find it if they're recommended it by enough people. If there's a vibe coming off it, then people want to be a part of that. And the beauty of the streaming age is, in theory, the beauty of the streaming age is now that, you know, I love the communal TV aspect as well, sitting down with my kids and my friends to watch stuff. But now we don't have to watch it when they tell us to watch it. We can pick it up when we're continents apart, when suits us. And that's that is a good thing.
10 years ago, when Matt Smith was the Doctor, you know, I would pirate it, obviously, like, you know, I'm a pirate, but I'd pirate like within 2-3 hours of it, like, you know, broadcasting, because I mean, like, and it would actually get posted because there was, you know, an actual legit audience for it, and so you could watch it pretty much like day and date without any hesitation or anything like that, without having to like, do a whole bunch of like,
they were lovely days as well, weren't they? Because people would do that, people such as yourself, and then they'd go onto Facebook or whichever. Facebook was far bigger at the time, and people would talk about these things, and it was really lovely. There was still lots of arguments because it's Doctor Who, of course there was arguments, but the general shared experience was still there, and I thought that was a real sweet spot for
There
the
were
show.
different kinds
and
of
that
arguments.
doesn't exist
back
anymore
then.
for Doctor Who.
It's like anything else. You used to argue about who was the best Doctor, which iteration of the Master could have worked well with which Doctor, and things like that. Like how he could have got out of this, or how the Doctor could have been easily defeated by this slight change in the Master's plan, or something along those lines of the Daleks, or whatever. We used to do it ad nauseum in the pub over a few pints before and after each broadcast episode of Doctor Who. Now it's, why does Doctor Who suck? And why aren't I allowed to say so?
Right.
It's fucking
Again, that's where the gold lies. Why aren't we allowed to talk about these things? Why aren't we allowed to see certain statistics which we've always been allowed to before?
Same reason you can't say anything negative in the movie industry or the gaming industry, and this is exactly what I talk about all the time on the channel. Of course, we know why. We just can't say why on YouTube because, we have to suckle the tea of the overlords. I guess that will do for this topic in particular, but we do have 2 episodes to review as part of our Spooktober bollocks, and those are Blink and Waters of Mars. So which one would you gentlemen like to talk about first?
Since
Let's
everyone
go with Blink. We'll start it in order.
Well, all right then.
All right, Blink wins then, I suppose. No one.
It was just a suggestion.
Well, I was going to say I would rather start with Waters of Mars because it's kind of
all right.
Because it's a very Monster of the Week kind of episode, and Blink's actually like really good.
All right, you know what? I actually agree. It would probably be better to start with Waters of Mars because it is regarded as the lesser of the 2. Yeah.
It's just
I swear Will's only saying that because I suggested the opposite.
Well,
I actually thought about it once they started talking.
I just like to always end on high notes is my thing, and like
that's what it is. Yeah, I thought it would be more gripping, and potentially the audience will stick around longer to hear us talk about Blink at the end.
It's just that you've all been so passionate in trying to eat chunks out of each other in the last topic. I was going to suggest Waters of Mars because I think the specials, which were the extra episodes to fill out 2009, 2010, were for the most part criminally underrated. There was one stinker in particular, but of the whole lot, Waters of Mars was the best of that lot, and it's a very unique villain that we haven't seen before or since. I mean, the concept of water being the opposition is a terrifying prospect to face, because to this day, as of the making of this live stream, folks, we still haven't found a way to beat that substance, that element that we are made out of for the most part.
Right.
I remember a few weeks ago there was some news report by the BBC, like this huge supply of water found on Mars, and all the comments were like, "Oh, this reminds me of the Waters of Mars."
Doctor Who fans.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Like, around about the same time was when they found the water on Mars, and I was wondering, like, is this actually? I couldn't remember whether the news report came first or the episode. And now there we go. But the Waters of Mars actually was what we rated as the best episode of the specials. So that was an interesting twist. The Waters of Mars, for me, represents kind of a bit of a squandered opportunity. I don't think it's a bad episode by any stretch. I think it's up there with many mid-tier RTD.
I wouldn't say it's a bottle episode.
It's a little self-contained, but unfortunately, it does have the Doctor, the Time Lord victorious. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the most interesting aspect of the episode.
That's what I remember, and that I feel was a real waste of what could have potentially been a good half season of morally ambiguous
character exploration.
Yeah, I feel like if Tennant had a good half season or so to really dive into the selfish, narcissistic elements of I can control time. I finally discovered that the rules of time are mine to exploit, kind of thing. It would have been difficult. I don't know whether you would have started it before The Waters of Mars and still had Adelaide go out the way she does.
It's very difficult to turn the pages of a book like that in a populist family show. Particularly at that time, where something like the Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica, for example, they could do that on a show like that because it's aimed more at the mature audience. They got more episodes. They've got, generally speaking, between 15 and 20 a season to sort of play with, and so it would never be cheapened in any way. So I think they probably could.
I feel like they could have done it for 2 or 3 episodes at least. Just have him be a little bit morally ambiguous. Just even children could sort of look at the odd thing he does here and there, like maybe he's a little harsher than he used to be.
As long as they're compelled to still watch and they see it's still the same man, because they
The
do
net
try that a little with
still
Capaldi's
good,
Doctor.
But his stuff, yes, they did in Series 8 especially, where, you know, am I a good man? Like, I do these things, I'll push someone out of a building, you know, if I think that actually is better for the...
How many years after that was this? About 5 or 6, something like that?
Series 8 from the specials, so 2010 to... oh, Jesus, yeah.
Well, no, the specials aired in 2009, and Capaldi's first season was 2014.
So you could say there's an argument then, Goldie, that in that intervening time, that Doctor Who had solidified its place back as part of certain British culture.
Slid back into the sort of more child-friendly element under Moffat. Even though he likes to write horror, he also wrote a Doctor that was much less complicated, or at least portrayed himself on screen as less complicated. So you'd have to know. It's like with Matt Smith, it was more of an if you know, you know kind of thing about the Doctor, whereas with Tennant there were regular scenes where he would have emotional episodes.
With hindsight, I do agree with you. I think that they could have started this ball rolling. It's certainly in Planet of the Dead, maybe even earlier, because Planet of the Dead's a very kind of, it's fun, it's very exuberant, but it lacks. But that lacks something that this has almost got too much of. It lacks a certain amount of weight.
Yeah, there wasn't much weight actually. It was a little bit too whimsical, Planet of the Dead, and they could have started it there. Yeah, they could have started it with. Could have started with the next Doctor. Honestly, and had a little mini arc where he just goes on a tear raging against his own inevitable demise.
Yeah, that's special season, because like it was just a season of specials. Like that should have been the focus of it. Was just the slow turn of the screw and him becoming, you know.
The moment I know we're only talking about the end before we've talked about the episode, because we often do that on this bloody show, but when Adelaide decides the Time Lord Victorious is wrong and then takes matters into her own hands, and I'm trying to be a bit delicate with my language in case anyone hasn't seen it or just wants us to be, until then, like, you know, if he'd started a little earlier than that and had 2 or 3 episodes to gradually descend a little bit. I watched Superman 3 when I was a kid and I handled it, you know, so kids can handle the idea that the Doctor's going down a bit of a dark path and they want to see the next thing, and their parents can explain to them if they, you know, what kind of parents wouldn't.
I mean, there were flashes of it before, like you know, like when he fights the spiders and everything like that. You know,
exactly.
So I mean, like it was an aspect of the character, and that's the thing. I just think that they should have fleshed it out a little bit more.
It may have unnerved the regular audience with being a gap of months in between these specials. If it was like a full season, or when they used to do the half seasons, perhaps it would have been an easier sell. Because in many respects, I believe the Waters of Mars, even though we do get more specials after this, where it truly ends. In most respects, when you look back to the Christmas invasion and the birth of this incarnation of the Doctor, how he's very much kind of doe-eyed and full of energy and almost an innocent and born again, as the title of that minisode was, that sort of that featured him in Children in Need. That blank slate is very much played up, and he sort of washed clean a little of some of the angst of the Eccleston Doctor. But by this point, he's travelled a certain distance. So this represents a kind of culmination of the trajectory of the character here in a way that the final 2 specials don't really, because they go mega, mega blockbuster. And that's more the culmination of literally everything. But the themes and the actual character arc of the 10th Doctor, if they don't end here, they're very much defined by the place that it gets to by the end of this story. It's like the pride and the ridiculous amounts of self-confidence, all those different things, the sense that the loss and gradual sense of gaining a new family around him, to the point where the character starts to believe that he could do anything. And that maybe so this is where the real pathos is in the original Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who. It's here, and this blockbuster for the small screen. It lasts about an hour and a quarter, something like that, doesn't it? So it's got lots of time to breathe too.
Plenty of breathing room. Yes, absolutely. I feel like if he had ended, obviously we have Journey's End. Is that? Yeah, that's the one with the towing the Earth back from Davros.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you've got the sort of almost fond farewells to every character, which we get again before he regenerates. Actually, even better. But yeah, if he'd started off with the next Doctor and then sort of just had like 5 more minutes to descend into himself and really fear the one who knocks, the he will knock 4 times thing. Not the one who knocks. That's fucking Breaking Bad, isn't it? But anyway. Then we could have had him have just like quiet moments where he starts to break, where he starts to snap, where he starts to twist the rules a little bit, he starts to bend things. It wouldn't be that hard to write in just a scene or two to show that he's starting to play a little bit fast and loose with the rules of time until he finally snaps in front of Adelaide in the waters of Mars and declares himself the Time Lord victorious, and then she obviously undoes all of that for him and shows him how powerless he truly is. Well, I mean, actually, if he hadn't said anything to her, that never would have happened. So it's just his arrogance that really was his undoing. And
it's shocking, isn't it? That whole conversation is shocking because he's our hero and we side with her.
Yes, we actually, for a moment, and that's why I think Doctor Who works, even as a children's show, it still makes you deal with some powerful shit that you're perhaps not emotional. If you were a child watching that, you'd be like, wow, I don't really like him right now. And I've had moments like that in other TV shows.
That's a good lesson for kids, though.
That is a great lesson for children. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then
I actually liked him, though.
I think it would have had more emphasis, more impact of him finally snapping and doing it.
I was happy with that he was arrogant and that he was doing cool things.
I was too, in my little sort of 25-ish, 24, 23-year-old kind of rage against the machine.
It's cool to see a character. It's cool to see a character like the Doctor go off the leash a little because we know that he holds so much back in the same way that Mr. Spock holds a lot in and holds something back.
Yes.
The Doctor often does hold things in to sometimes just to maintain an illusion. To game the people that he's sort of working with and moving around, so I think he's less than he is.
Yeah, the guy he thinks he should be, or the guy that he wants others to see him as.
He was trying to do something positive. I mean, even though he was irresponsible and arrogant, I mean, him wanting to have her stay alive, it's not a bad thing to want. It's just that maybe he gave himself too much credit in how much power he has in the grand scheme of things.
Well, he wanted her to live just so that because it pulled on his heartstrings. She was destined to die, which of course mirrors what he has been told by Ood Sigma
himself. And so if he can make her live, he can make himself live.
Exactly. If he can stop her from dying and bend time to ensure that she will live, then there's nothing to stop him from doing the same for himself. Exactly.
Isn't anyone going to thank me when he saves the three of them and the Asian lady is just terrified and the Russian guy goes with her and they end up being together? It's like that arrogant nature that from my perspective, if the Doctor is like that, he needs shooting, he needs regenerating, his time is done because he will cause more damage than what he will say.
And this is all very, very relatable because when we see how and this isn't all the characters, but particularly the Doctor, why it's so relatable is because it's so effective and we can see how he's got there. And these are things that we sometimes recognise, I think, in ourselves. And this is something that Russell T Davies used to be able to do very, very well. And we do get flashes of it, even right up to now. I think that Dot and Bubble, as you were saying earlier on, Goldie, I think Dot and Bubble, there are isolated pockets of it that still exist in his work.
There's some inspiration there.
He could do it. He seemed to have such a grasp of it and know exactly what this character was about. And I know that it's not just him. Phil Ford co-wrote this, and there is a dash of something else about this. I think Phil Ford's a fantastic writer of adventure storytelling, so it's very serviceable in that respect. But because you've got somebody who knows the character broadly so well and who's worked so extensively and intensively with his lead actor, in this case, it's a pity we're not getting this now. In this case, that we've got something that is so immersive and so affecting that we still talk about it the way we do now.
We're still talking about. We haven't even talked about the plot of the episode, the monster of the week. We haven't talked about anything. All we're talking about is this moment where the Doctor, for 5 minutes, fucking goes rogue, and the potential that was squandered.
The gentleman on the bottom. Sorry, what's your name? FX, is it? I can't quite.
Oh, it's problematic white guy or John.
Problematic. So, John. So what you were saying is right, though, John. I wouldn't describe it as a bottle episode, but it is a base under siege story. This is something Doctor Who had been doing since the Troughton era. So it's fairly. It's something that we've seen. It's a remix of things that we're very familiar with. So I think this is why we reach for the other stuff, but it's a great example of that mode of storytelling. It's like the thing. It's that kind of John Carpenter's thing. It's like that kind of stuff. And
that's what I was going to say that I love about it is like, because people often show and tell far more than they reveal, which is what we were just talking about with, the Doctor wants to be seen in a certain way, but now his masks, like in that last 5 minutes, it completely slides off and everybody can actually kind of like see what this thing is. And so even it was the bottle episode, like I'm talking about, like there is this larger thing that's traveling through it. And so it's interesting because it's almost like, like you said, Breaking Bad earlier, it actually is kind of the Heisenberg of.
You see, the thing is that Heisenberg had all the breathing time that you could possibly have to turn evil. So the genius of Breaking Bad, just for the moment, is the fact that you don't know. Everyone has a moment where they stopped rooting for Walter White. For many of us, it was way too late. We kind of judge ourselves for not jumping off the train.
No, I
earlier.
never stopped rooting
We're still
for
cheering.
him.
For me, I never stopped rooting for him either. Actually,
I never stopped rooting. Until the last minute.
It's like a social experiment. How long will you cling to a protagonist? Was it when he almost stabbed his wife? Like when do you get off? When he kidnapped his daughter? Like when his brother-in-law died? Like when? No, I mean, I couldn't get off either because I was like, I need to see what happens to this character.
No, I just wanted him to win. I mean, at this point, I just figured he has to do what he has to do.
Something, right? Has to have been worth something. That's what you get with him. With the Doctor in opposition, it's like, okay, so you are a very frustrated man. You've been told that for all the work you've done, for all the good you have tried to do, you are destined to die, even as you've done nothing bad whatsoever. And Tennant's Doctor is a bit of an egomaniac anyway when you actually sort of analyze him. And then finally he snaps. I just wish we'd had a little bit more foreshadowing, a little bit more build up, a few more hints of him going rogue, so that when he finally shouts this scene here with his picture on the screen where he shouts, "The laws of time are mine," it's like, okay, yeah, I can see how you got there. Whereas in this, it's like you haven't cared about this until just now.
And that's something.
Sorry, go on.
I'll let Ryan go.
Of all the villains he could say it to, though, a being made out of water that infects everything it touches is quite the villain to say that to, because it can't really be beaten.
Yeah, that he even says that earlier in the episode. He says water waits. Like that's all it does. It waits. And obviously he's talking about things like erosion. Like if you give it enough time, water will defeat stone. It just will. And that's fascinating because he's saying that, but then he's decided to be the koi swimming up the waterfall, It's interesting.
I want to say because
about this. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just want to comment on what many of you have said, that his declaration of "I'm the Time Lord Victorious," it seems to come out of nowhere, or there should have been some more build-up. I'm actually going to disagree with you on that, and I'm going to say, and I don't say this in a rude way, I think that's kind of an ignorant approach to the whole situation. If you look at the Ninth Doctor, he was someone who is the Doctor who experienced grief. He's the PTSD Doctor, and what's the next stage after that is anger. So that That's where the pride comes in. And if you look at Tennant's first season, and he's trying to get with Rose, and I know many people, still don't really like that about the Doctor, and I don't think the Doctor should be like that, but self-contained, I think it's good for this story, because the Doctor is someone who gives in to lust and then he gets punished for it, and we see in season 3 as the chance to finally get with someone, not in a romantic way, the Master, who is one of his own kind, and then he loses the Master. And also in season 4, there is many cases of foreshadowing for the Time Lord Victorious in the Voyage of the Damned, right? When Astrid dies, he goes up to the computer, the projector, to try and get her back, and he's kicking it and he's punching it, and he's like, I can do anything, I can bring back life. And the tour guide has to remind him, you don't have all this power, and if you did, it would make you a madman, it'd make you a villain. So he does get reminded of that. In Midnight, he declares that I'm smarter than you humans, and he gets reminded, well, are you saying you're better than us? Well, I'm not saying that. In the Doctor, the Doctor's daughter, he loses his daughter. In Silence in the Library, he tries to save River Song, and he gets reminded, you're not always the hero, I can be the hero as well. There are many cases of this self-sacrifice.
I think what you're pointing to, Goldie, is destiny and the weight of responsibility, not just as somebody who is the last of his kind and the survivor of that war. But
agreed.
He can never really be at rest, which is something that they do return to. Even to this day, they do. I mean, I do think that I don't think he gave into lust in series 2. He fell in love with Rose after she fell in love with him.
Because at the time he was convinced that he had no other options to ever have love, because he was convinced that he was the last of the Time Lords and the one responsible for it. So
yeah, I just wanted to say
he believed that he got to the point where he thought, well, maybe I'm not destined to do this alone. I don't think it was a sexual thing that he was conscious of. I'm not even sure if it was an emotional thing that he was completely in command of, but he did believe, he did get to a place where he thought, okay, maybe this isn't my lot to carry my cross to bear.
To be fair, with Rose, you're not even sure at the time when she leaves and tells him that she loves him. You're not even sure that he is romantically in love with her. By the time they meet again and they go back to Bad Wolf Bay and the parallel universe, the other Doctor kisses her because he's in the position to do so. There's a lot you can unpack there. Maybe he built it up in his head during the years that they were apart, because of course it kept coming up and up again and again and again, the name Rose. And
well,
why wouldn't he as human just go for it?
The thing about how we're talking about how he's moving on through the stages of grief and everything like that, you are definitely a lot more susceptible at that point in time. So to
maybe this was his bargaining stage,
right. And so if he's able to find solace in someone else because he can't find solace in himself, that's kind of like those things that happen and everything like that. So there's an
I guess Rose was his denial stage then.
Well, I mean,
what's his anger stage? The spider woman, what's her name? The raccoon?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a time when he's trying to have control, and that's what I'm saying. Is there's flashes of
bargaining would be the Time Lord Victorious. Depression would be the moment before he regenerates.
Right, and so
that's what I wanted to get out.
When he punches the console and screams, "It's not fair! It's not fair! I could do so much more." That's anger, but it's also kind of depression.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to put into frame.
It's an interesting thought. I've never considered that. Sorry, go on.
Well, I'm just saying, the character's a lot more complex. When you start kind of looking at how this is a jigsaw puzzle that's kind of missing pieces, and he's just trying to fit things in there that will work. And it's still not actually going to give you the fullness of the picture, because no matter what, he's never going to be a man. He's not a man.
Well, in this, he sees Adelaide as he sees in Adelaide Brooks his kind of moral equal, rather than anything, and that's why I think you see him so desolate by the choice.
He knows that her death will spur on great things for mankind, though. It's a fixed point for him. It needs to happen so that her granddaughter will go on to do, I can't remember exactly what it was, fantastic things. And you see the newspaper headlines or the internet headlines that
she takes the humanity
remain the same.
beyond
instead of
the
changing.
Milky Way galaxy for some, as I recall, or something like
At
that.
the
But
end
he-
of it all, the only thing that changes is the word at the end of where she died. It's got her tribute page and it says she died on Mars, and then Mars changes to Earth.
Because
And
she's a future
everything
historical.
else remains
Because
the
she's a
exact
future
same.
historical figure, Will. And
Yes.
we have historical figures that we found out about in school during our education and culturally too. The Doctor is a kind of living, never-ending historical figure, and so that he never gets to have the headstone and the final kind of judgment made on his life. He moves on to the next life. And I think this is another reason why he's so captivated by Adelaide Brooks as well, and considers, as you said, who said that he figures that if he can rewrite one, he can rewrite himself. You know, I think he sees something of himself in her as well. Frustration. It's a fascinating story.
I mean,
Brilliant
so what do you guys think of the rest of the episode?
I think it's great. Lots of people die. A rocket ship blows up.
It's pretty generic, though, isn't it? It's been done before.
It's a blockbuster for the small screen.
Zombies are shit. Let's be honest. The water zombies are shit. They run like they're shit.
Oh,
they
I have
look
to disagree.
terrifying.
It
they
was
look
that is
terrifying.
rubbish.
Wait, they look terrifying, but they run like they're on a Sunday morning jog. They really
well, they're the Zack Snyder zombies, aren't they?
They're just they're like this. I watched it. They've got their hands exactly like I'm doing with my hands right now. They're just
parkrun.
They're not really trying to catch
They do
him.
the Tom Cruise run.
They don't like run straight at the glass and start smashing it and stuff. They just sort of stop and give up when he closes the door.
Water is patient.
Yeah.
Water is
That is
have you ever tried running
the
through
moment
water?
when he says that. That is exactly the moment when he says that.
Yeah.
But it's still just a little bit, you know.
I think it's unique. I think that monster, that thing.
I thought they
that
were
infection-
terrifying, and then I watched the episode, and I was like, "These guys are."
And the
nothing.
way they set it all up, because that water was deliberately cold, folks. The way they set it up with all those actors actually being constantly surrounded by water, having pipes in their sleeves.
It looks horrible. The makeup department did a fantastic
Oh, do you want me
job.
to tell you what's even
I
more
just
disturbing?
think that they weren't actually that hard to get away from.
Right.
What I will say is very disturbing in this episode is when you first see the transformation. So I think it may be the cold opening or whatever, but there's two characters who are in that sort of the plant area, and the camera is focused on one person, but blurred in the background there's another person shaking uncontrollably, and that's just freaky because the camera's telling you to look at this person and it's very clear 'cause it's focused on them, but in the background there's this person just shaking and you don't know what's happening, and that's what's incredibly freaky. And what I will say about these monsters is that they feel in a way like a Stephen Moffat monster. What Moffat usually does is he takes like a basic concept, a basic human fear, and sort of expands that, makes it into a monster. So the idea of water, there's something in the water, it can transform you, that feels very Moffat-like, which perhaps is why I'm so intrigued by them.
Yeah,
it feels like an old movie, but in a good way, like a classic. It feels like it could be a classic movie.
Oh, definitely. By the way, when I said that the water zombies were shit, I only meant like they weren't convincing when they ran. That they were really trying to. If you've seen 28 Days Later, that's how zombies run.
But again, though, if they are water monsters, which they are, have you ever tried to run in water though? It's damn near impossible, and it's like that's the thing that's powering it.
Okay, in that case, then they're doing an excellent job because they're running much better than anyone could run in water.
The reason why they'd sort of imagine why they would conceive of the monsters, the way that they walk and things like that. What they want ideally is for kids to imitate it in the playground the following Monday, to do the walk, to do the face.
I like the way you think. You're always thinking from an audience or a production standpoint, and I've drifted away from that in my years, away from actually producing things.
Well, at one time, the people who made Doctor Who really cared about this stuff. The scarecrows in the family of Blood episodes and Human Nature, that's the perfect example of it, really. Every aspect of that was considered. How horrific should those sackcloth faces look? How grim should the walk be? How scary should we make this? And it's the same. It's the same with this.
they're bowling like with their arms like sort of swaying like that all the time, which is actually freaky because that looks like how a scarecrow would actually.
And if you watch them workshop in that, there's versions of it in various states of development. It's fascinating to know that they were so diligent and responsible.
I used
in how
to
they were trying to
love
balance it.
watching Doctor Who Confidential back when it used to be on telly.
That used to be a joy.
That was stuff. It was the icing on the cake after.
I didn't even watch most of the Doctor Who Unleashed earlier this year.
No, nobody did. The only reason we even know it
been-
exists is because that's where Russell T Davies said that bi-generation retroactively affects all Doctors ever.
Oh.
It's like, well, you do realise that the previous
I've
showrunner made
been-
there about 1,000 Doctors before Hartnell. So now what have you done?
I've been watching Doctor Who Confidential for the first time, and it is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I just sometimes get lost in how they're describing how they made an effect or how they shot a scene. It's so great, and I feel like I've actually been like tutored through all the people on there.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's how I
exactly.
felt.
As a previous film student, sometimes I used in the old days, I would rather watch the appendices discs of the Lord of the Rings extended editions than the movies. That I found much more like the story of how the hell they fucking made this thing, as opposed to the presentation that you get, because it is actual human triumph in many cases to do it. And now it just sort of feels like,
Everything's so samey. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think I bought like 3 different versions of Terminator 2 on DVD throughout the years because
Right.
of the different, aspects of
Brian, a
behind the scenes.
DVD is a disc. It used to go into a disc player. It looks very much like one of these. It's
well, the point
says
I wanted to make.
DVD, you see, digital versatile. disc.
Yes, I do have twin towers of media, and they will never fall. But the point I wanted to make in regards to Waters of Mars, the craziest thing about this episode, I think the craziest parts, first of all, is what caused this infection to take root, and it was a faulty filter that watered one of the carrots, which caused the smallest of things caused this crisis and
Beautiful.
probably set back planet Earth's development in
If you
space.
wanna terrify
watch this.
people- If you want to terrify people, you create a horrifying, like monstrous scenario, and you have the cause of it be something that could easily be avoided,
So
but also
mundane.
could easily happen to you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another thing I liked about this episode, my second favorite moment, was when the water was seeping through like layers. It was either of concrete or lead, and how it split the room, the white room, in half, and one of the women were trapped. And the last thing she did before the water was coming
over
for
her
her
family?
was to listen to a recording from, I think it was her daughter, and the sheer horror of that I thought was incredible. I mean, the characters, the side characters in this particular story really add layers to Waters of Mars, especially that annoying geek fucker, because just one drop, and he turned.
Yeah, one drop. That is a horrifying.
And the fact that he
concept.
was at least cool enough to actually like say, just go on without me, and like he actually like showed some nobility, like there at the end, like he was just like, that's it, I'm dead, and like like I mean that kind of actual pathos for the people that he was there with, when like the lead up of the episode is him just kind of being like just kind of a general douchebag.
Yeah, we're gonna have to actually wrap up
within it, but
sorry, mate, I didn't realize you were going to carry on. We're going to have to wrap up our thoughts on this one and move on to the next episode to keep time. But I do have a super chat here for $5 dues from a certain Mr. T. Jabs D. Thank you very much. There's an episode where the baddie on Mars wasn't the most dangerous monster in the episode. Presumably, he means the Doctor. It's several episode arc instead of one episode. That is a very big can of worms to open. I would love to have seen so many of the modern series.
It's
over multiple episodes. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting, like that we actually did go with these 2 episodes. Like there actually is a lot of weird kind of parallels and dichotomies that you can extrapolate from, because like the water is also kind of this shapeless, formless kind of thing. That how do you fight against that? And then obviously the angels are considered one of like, you know, the most, you know, difficult to deal with enemies in all of Whodom.
Well, what about the fact
that you said about water versus stone? What would happen? You know, like what would happen?
Eventually, water will win. Yeah, absolutely, it always does. It's time. Right? Time defeats everything eventually, which is what the Doctor's facing. Time in that sort of sense is very much like water. It's an inevitability that he is now trying to push against, like the stone trying to stop the water. So what do you think about the fact, guys, that as bad and terrifying as the concept of the even not necessarily the practice of the water zombies is, they get completely upstaged in the last 5 minutes by the Doctor proving to be a potentially even worse threat to the universe than anything he's faced.
Right.
And that's why he has to die.
Because he does, like, if no one had told him he was about to regenerate, would this have ever happened?
No. And that's the nature of time travel and of temporal mechanics. The past, the future creates the past, and the past creates the future. That's why
something
it's so...
we deal with all the time in time travel stories. That's why we're sci-fi nerds, I know.
So anyway, this is a very strong. However you look through the entire 60 years of Doctor Who, this is a really strong installment. Even though it's pretty self-contained, you could show this to people who may not even have seen the show before, and I think they'd have a good time with it. They'd be intrigued by it, and they'd almost certainly want to see some more. Even though it's quite late in the era, this is a very, very strong story and a personal favourite of mine.
Yeah, well, this was the #1 that we voted for out of the 5 specials. I think second was episode 2 of End of Time. Then the next Doctor, then episode 1, then last was, of course, the one with the bus.
Right.
That was called. I actually when I said at the beginning when we were talking about what we were going to do first, I said I wanted to do what everyone considers to be gold dust, top tier horror Doctor Who, and one that maybe people mostly perceive as bad. But the more we've talked about it, the more convinced I am that this isn't a bad episode at all. Quite the opposite. It's actually excellent. Yeah. So
it presents as though it's fairly pedestrian, but there is a lot going on in it, and that's kind of what's really cool about it. You know,
we've had 45 minutes out of it.
Though,
so,
in comparison, though, to Blink, since we're kind of moving on, like
let's move on.
For as dangerous as the Doctor is in Waters of Mars, he's completely, you know, out of control, and I don't mean out of control as in unhinged. Like he's stuck. He's Blink, beaten. He's defeated in Blink, and that's why I said this is like actually like a really good balance of stuff to talk about today.
And there's another reason why there's a really good balance here, and in terms of our putting these two together, is that Waters of Mars more than anything is about the Doctor and his interpretation of the events around him, whereas Blink is almost completely without the Doctor. He is a plot device for more than 3/4 of this episode. So what do we think, gentlemen, about Blink?
Well, this episode is kind of the personification of what Ryan said, you know, the past creates the future creates the past. This episode is very wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, as you know, Moffat, that phrase that he created, which I believe is first said in this episode. This is a phenomenal episode. Right? Again, it's what Moffat does best. You know, he takes a basic human fear or a basic concept of statues and makes them, you know, science fictiony and supernatural in some way. And
I will tell you that every single person I've ever showed this to, I've showed a few people only this episode out of context. I've never seen a single person ever react to this in any way other than sheer fucking dread throughout the entire experience.
I think
adults, children, everyone.
I do find it a little bit not problematic. I don't really know the word I would use to describe it, but when people say like this is their favorite Doctor Who story, they say this is the best. I don't take it that far, because I think it deviates so far from the formula. Although that can be a good thing when you have a.
The way I don't think that the Christmas specials are necessarily that good, because they're not necessarily good Doctor Who stories. This isn't necessarily the best Doctor Who story, but it is a great story.
It is a good
Yeah,
one.
so when you have a show that follows a formula and you deviate from it, those episodes are often looked at as being some of the best or the most interesting because they do deviate from the formula. But I don't really think it qualifies it for the best or one of your favorite
I
episodes.
agree with you, mate.
But what I will say about I think I've lost my train of thought on what I was gonna. Yeah,
Must be that
Okay.
gaping, bleeding wound in the middle of your head, mate. That's probably.
No, it's because you fucking interrupted me, Will. I was speaking. You stopped.
Hey, you'll never make it to SNH if you can't handle being interrupted.
I know.
I've been on SNH.
Yeah, but you were a guest. We had to treat you with kid gloves, Goldie.
Yeah.
I mean, you're quite right to look at this within that framework because it is atypical, and as you said, Will, about the Christmas specials, they're the same to a certain extent, but this even more so. And you look across to the original series of Star Trek, which, if people haven't seen that ever, make time for it. It's superb for the most part.
Oh,
but the episode that people rave about the most is the City on the Edge of Forever. And just like this isn't typical Doctor Who, City on the Edge of Forever isn't typical Star Trek. And yet they're the episodes that get sort of lifted up. It's because they're atypical to some extent that they stand out. Yes, both are excellent, but they mainly stand out within the body of the greater thing. Each season of Doctor Who, in my opinion, since it came back, because obviously it's a different format to the original show, each season of the new series has to be greater than the sum of its parts. So everything has to have a part that it plays in the broader whole. And this does do that, but in its own right, just as you sort of pointed to, well, you could show this to anybody just to amuse them. They don't even have to, it doesn't even have to be some sort of hard sell on Doctor Who. You could show this to somebody who just fancies being freaked out for 50 minutes, a few low rent chills, and they're going to have a pretty good time with it. So it is an anachronism in that respect, but I look at it very similar as the City on the Edge of Forever.
What's really cool about it is Sally herself as a character. I'll let you speak. Go ahead.
I was going to say that this is probably the prime era of RTD and Moffat, which it's interesting to see when they were at the height of their powers, when they were really focused on their work and they were younger and more cutting edge. How they could take something that could have been a throwaway episode and make it into something that's become like the stuff of legends within the franchise. And today, I don't think they could do any of that.
No, but to what you're saying though, like the writing in this is so good, is that this character Sally, it's built all around her relationship dynamics and things like that, and even when the whole thing at the end where the Doctor meets her, it's Doctor.
She knows more than he does. Is that right?
Well, because when she meets the Doctor, he knows nothing about the whole.
Yeah, he's
thing.
about to go and and
he's about to go do something else entirely. And so, it's like it's that whole thing about when she encounters him through the DVD, which that's the other cool thing about this is we were talking about DVDs. It takes place in a DVD store, and she's got these DVDs that are kind of the keys to everything, and they're just these weird things, like this guy from the 1960s who's just saying this weird shit. What's that all about? And the Doctor himself, he's just like, well, I don't know, where I got the information from because I haven't had that experience in my life yet, but I just know that I've got this because it happens in the future. I'm
a time traveler. I got it in the future. Although I will say the one thing that stands out in this episode is what happens to the black cop, in that the angels get him, transport him back, and then he's in the hospital dying, and he's going to die when the rain stops. But he's the guy that put the Doctor in all of those extras. So if the angels hadn't have pounced on him, then the Doctor wouldn't have
exactly. The angels caused their own downfall, and that's what's so great about it. It's her friend going back to the 1920s and saying, "Don't cry for me. My life is amazing and great," and all this stuff that's just it's one of the most amazing episodes. Just in terms,
Moffat revisits that later, doesn't he, with Amy and Rory too?
Yes.
And yet this is
with them.
Yeah, and yes, the angels again. But this is a refinement in several respects because they'd add the Dr. Light thing was a practical part of making 13/14 episodes of the series a year. So they had to, in the way that it was arranged and filmed, there would simply be an episode which couldn't feature the Doctor so much. And it's kind of, they get it right this time.
Moffat, which was a stroke of genius.
Yeah, give it to Moffat in his mid-40s when he was still really, really hungry and full of ideas. So it's a refinement of that. And it's also a refinement of the story, because this is, obviously we'd seen this story before, had been in a Doctor Who annual in another form as a short story that Stephen Moffat also wrote. It was called something like What I Did Over the Christmas Holidays or something like that.
Girl in it. It
yeah, so they knew it had worked. People had loved it. So it's what about we just expand this, make it broader and more nuanced? So again, it's another refinement. And then you've got the Weeping Angels, which Doctor Who, by this point, it was 3 seasons in. It was a cultural phenomenon again, but it hadn't managed to. You could look at the Ood possibly as a big bad guy, as a recognisable alien.
Creepy.
But until the angels, nothing had really come along that's up there with the Daleks, the Cybermen.
Exactly.
So everything just coalesces.
Because they prey on a guttural fear that almost everybody has. That like like fear of the dark or fear of closing your fucking eyes. But what if you close your eyes instinctively, as we all must, every few seconds or whatever, to when we look in a different direction or something? It's an autonomous practice. We can't really control it completely.
I know I blinked a few times.
These things can move at light speed to rip you. But then he goes ahead and gives you like the gentlest death. They'll fling you back a few hundred years and you get to live.
All you have to do
and
is
that's
live.
why the Doctor says they're the nicest bad guys ever. We're
effectively cattle, but rather than being sent to slaughter, we do get sent off to have a nice life. whenever, just without a smartphone.
Fine. Amy and Rory were so fine that she published a book,
Here's what I'll say about this episode. And go on, Ryan.
Well, I was just going to say, the angels touch me. I end up in the 1930s. Guess where I'm going to go, folks? But in all seriousness, I see that, and it freaks me out to this day. And also, before Goldie speaks his piece, the fact that these are actual people in costume, I think, is the most terrifying thing of all.
You gotta love that. That's Doctor Who.
What is very good about this episode, and it's something that no one else has mentioned, it's something I thought of actually a few days ago, is that one of the reasons why this episode is so effective is that any other episode, right? Of course, there are scary elements, like in Waters of Mars, Empty Child, and so on and so forth. But this episode doesn't have the Doctor as the central protagonist. So with most episodes, you're kind of, you are scared for the Doctor, you're scared for the companion, but you always have that thing to lie back on where you know that they're going to make it out one way or another. But with this episode, where it's a new character, not linked to the Doctor really in any way, anything can happen to Sally Sparrow. She could die, something else could happen, and it's totally believable. Because, she's not a recurring character. You've never seen her before, so there's nothing to fall back on. Like, anything could happen to her. She could die. Whereas with other episodes, yes, the Doctor may find himself in peril, but you ultimately know he's going to make it out one way or another.
Originally, the ending was going to be... Sorry to interrupt you, Troy. Originally, it was going to be a far darker ending where Sally was going to be lost in time. But between them, Moffat and Russell T Davies decided against it.
I like the linchpin,
I read that the original
saves herself. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the original ending was that she was going to walk back into the DVD shop and there would be an angel and it would take her, back in time or whatever. I don't know if that's true.
I just wish they hadn't brought these guys for the departure of Amy and Rory. I didn't like that.
Yeah, you said before when we talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just... I thought that was a waste. I really liked what they did here in this episode, and I feel like bringing them back for that departure seemed like a cheap gimmick.
What I liked about that was the fact that the angels were back to how Moffat had defined them in this, whereas in the Byzantium two-parter, they got all kinds of weird new powers and stuff that was sort of explained away as, these are angels at their full power, even though half of them they've been eroded by water for quite a long time. But yeah, I like the fact that they fling you into the past, so they're not actually going to kill you, but somehow, because of the way they look, the way they act, the way that the situation is, like, literally your ability to see is now your ability to survive.
Right.
So that is horrifying as a concept to any child. And you know, Moffat loves to prey on childhood fears. That is
I thought you were going to say something else then. Well,
God.
Dude, I would never say a negative word about the Moff. Even if he...
I mean, the start of The Girl in the Fireplace literally has a monster under the bed.
Yeah, he plays on all those things, and that's what he does. It's fun. He enjoys it. The angels are absolutely horrifying. I thought that everybody in this, even the drippy guy who's like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, the DVD guy, he kind of reminded me of a buddy of mine that I had who worked at Blockbuster, where I later ended up working as well. And he was exactly like him, and I just laughed my head off the whole way through because he was such a gormless twat, actually, most of the time. And so was the dude. And I mean, Sally Sparrow.
Both the DVD guys were great. Like even just the one who's just like, yeah, it's like, you know, like when she's asked where he's at, and he's just like, you know, the big fat.
It's an urban legend, you know. Guy, have you ever seen it? He's the guy on the DVDs. We've all found these DVDs. It's,
the concept of the Easter egg, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
love that.
Seems so old-fashioned now as well, doesn't it, Ryan? I mean, when was the last time you saw an Easter egg advertised as part of
a new DVD?
Yeah, fair play.
I miss those.
Well, the concept of spoilers came out of River Song and you know, her timeline first in the library, then with the,
and they do a little riff on that in this too, where like the time is out of whack, and like, you know, like you meet like the doctor that meets her at the end is like, you know, like he's from a different point in time entirely, and like, you know, than the one that she's been dealing with, and it's great. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on in this one.
Yeah, it's actually a much bigger and deeper episode than you kind of realize. Like there are so many levels to it.
Well, the first time Sally and the DVD guy meet, the DVD guy is completely nude.
What's the deal? I can't remember anymore. Why the writing is already on the wall in the house right at the beginning? She walks into the creepy old house.
The doctor did it after the fact. Because he knows, like, in the future, like, you know, he could set it up, and then, you know, that's what I'm saying. Is like the whole story is kind of like it's Pulp Fiction, but not. It's like
it's a time loop,
right? And so and when we're talking about, like, you know, I'm Dr. You know, I'm you know, Victorious here versus this, like. This is actually him being stuck in a situation that he can't undo because it's not the state of reality that's fixed. It's the doctor.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's been displaced in time, and so he has to use what knowledge he has. Wait. Oh, yeah, because she already told him. She gives him the...
She gives him the packet at the end, and then...
And that's how he knows, and then he can leave her the message to get the packet. You see, that's a time loop done right. Compared to something like 73 Yards, which is a paradox.
Well, it really showcases rather the Weeping Angels as these top level time beings, for lack of a better term, and that's why a few theories around there.
Potential energy, is that it? Right?
Exactly. Originally, and then they went to snapping necks, and then they went back to the potential time energy. But it adds credence to the fact is this isn't the typical villain. Because I think this was originally planned to be a one and done project, but then Stephen Moffat took control and thought to himself, "Well, I'm gonna flesh this out."
Not for nothing, Ryan, but I can tell you for a fact that I was part of the fandom at that point, and we were really screeching kind of obnoxiously for some more angels.
Yeah,
like. We really were going.
Well, there was slightly more. There was slightly more to it originally when he conceived of the characters. He'd been offered the slot because obviously the Empty Child and the Doctor Dance has been such a standout part of Series 1. So understandably, Russell T Davies had offered him another 2 parts for Series 2, which Moffat couldn't fulfill that commission because he was too busy doing other things. Yeah, so he just contributed the one. But originally, he did work up the idea for a two-parter. The plot would become the Silence in the Library in series 4, but the antagonists were going to be the Weeping Angels. So this kind of was the second story. They were meant to be a one and done. It just wasn't meant to be this one. So I suppose there could be a parallel universe out there somewhere where it's what are they called? The dust creatures.
The Vashta Narada.
The Vashta Narada were in this, and the angels were in Silence in the Library. So I think because they're very kind of Moffat ideas, they're simple and yet so complicated in what they can do. But yeah, so that was the original idea, and things got moved around because of availability.
Well, the other great thing, though, like
opened with the Vashta Narada before revealing the Weeping Angels, we might have not received the Vashta Narada so well because we knew that he was the guy who can chill us to our fucking bones with the Weeping Angels. We bought into the Vashta Narada much better. I think it would have been.
Well, the Weeping Angels were so successful that they do like you're talking about, but like even the Silence you can see are this thing that kind of exists because of the Weeping Angels, and because it's it's not the don't blink, it's when you actually
don't look away.
Don't look away, right? Exactly, and so
blink and you're dead,
right? And so it's almost an inversion because once you actually see the Silence, that's when they go and wipe your mind and it's like you haven't seen them, but it's only when you actually look at them that silence will affect you. So
it's still scary. All of the stars sort of really align for this 45, 50 minutes. At the time when I saw this sort of listed down, looking ahead, what have we got in store this year on Doctor Who? And I saw this one, thought, Stephen Moffat, always enjoy his stuff. But this is the one that I kind of looked past. Because I hadn't particularly, I watched Doctor Who to see the Doctor. Thank you very much. If I wanted, there's loads of TV shows that don't have the Doctor in already. If I didn't want to see the Doctor, I'd go and watch one of those. So the Doctor Light episodes, they were kind of things that I used to kind of watch out of obligation. Oh, okay, fair enough. He'll be back next week. But this one was never like that. And whenever I revisited it, I'm charmed by it all over again.
I think the reason that Moffat did such a fantastic job and why he's great at this kind of thing in general is because he is such a legendary fan of Doctor Who. I mean, hell, he wrote The Curse of Fatal Death, for crying out loud. He is able to potentially harness that feeling of wonder and childlike, kind of oh God, who is this Doctor guy? And he harnesses that and he uses it to power this episode. You spend the whole time, well, not the whole time, obviously you get the plot set up, and then Sally Sparrow finds out about DVD extras, and of course you recognize the Doctor, but you're seeing it from her perspective, that she knows nothing about this guy. Who is this guy? More than she does. But for an episode that has nothing to do with the Doctor, for most of it, it's all about the Doctor.
Right.
So I mean, it's like most
something that Moffat could do.
Episodes have all about the Doctor. Sorry, go on, man.
Something that the Doctor could, that Moffat could do. Sorry, that I don't think any other writer could at the time, and I think others have tried to do since with some degree of success. Is that in the creation of the Weeping Angels? Yes, that it is very, very primal, but here in the creation of this character, he's brought into existence a villain, a monster that will scare everybody from the little kids right up to the adults, but scare them for different reasons. With children, it's the blank face, it's the lumbering sort of gait, or in this case, the sort of freezing. It's very, very physical and very visual. But with us, as well, I was a grown-up at the time. I'd got small children myself. It's very much the psychology. If I could blink at any time, and then I'm living God knows when. I'd never see my children again. So it frightens adults on a different level to
he's brilliant at kids. Like I said earlier on, he's brilliant at playing with the sort of primal fears, childhood fears, like fear of the dark, fear of closing your eyes. But on the other hand, the Weeping Angels are born from things that we see everywhere. If you live in England, if you live in a near or have ever been to a major city, it's only a matter of time until you see a bunch of statues, right? So they're everywhere. It's an old country. We've got lots of statues. What if you closed your eyes next to a statue? That's two things. One that's everywhere, and the other is something everyone has to do. And both of those have been weaponized against you, the viewer. It's fucking genius. That's
the big thing at the end of the episode. Statues everywhere.
Yeah, there's a montage of them. A really kind of, I would, if anything else had done it now these days, I'm such a cynic now. I would have called it like ad nauseum, obnoxious, or something like that.
And that would have been a great way to end
at the end of that episode, because that episode has got you sitting on the edge of your bloody seat the whole way through.
It's the sort of thing that Roald Dahl used to do as well in his writing for children.
Absolutely, in the witches and things like that. Yes, because he describes them as like just your sort of ugly old neighbors that you have next door, but they're actually horrifying people who eat children. You know, it's Roald Dahl. Moffat must be a fan of Roald Dahl, I'm sure.
And it would have been great for a surprise two-parter. I mean, the first part, Blink, and then the second part, Blinks, where all the statues suddenly wake up. You
Open your eyes. Or something like
you think the Doctor has beaten the Weeping Angels? Well, there are other variants of these evil monsters. Every statue is one of these things, and that would be just ramping up the terror level even more.
Even like like 5 years ago, I think was the first time I showed Doctor Who to my wife, my now wife. She was not happy after watching Blink. Like there was a little while we had to go for a walk out in the sunshine for a little while, just
not in the graveyard. Then
no, in a lovely tropical paradise where we were living, but it was a bit kind of like, are you okay? Because I know you're susceptible. They're a little bit less sort of cynical in the Philippines, a little bit more naive, dare I say. Love you Filipinos, don't get mad, all right? But they're a little bit more susceptible to things like this than us cynical Brits are. And
more superstitious.
Yes, much more superstitious. My God, I could tell you some horribly stupid things that they believe. But yeah, so she was a little rattled by it, and I had to take her for a walk afterwards,
You mentioned Moffat is a lifelong fan of Doctor Who, and even though the more I watch the Weeping Angel two-parter from Matt's first season, the more problems I find with it. What I will say is that I always give Moffat credit for this, and I think it's still something which he does up until this day. Which is he does seem really in tune with the fandom, unlike Russell T Davies. So, for example, with Blink, after many people watched it, they were saying, "Well, what happens if you take a picture of the Weeping Angel? What happens if you blink with one eye and not with the other, and then you do that vice versa?" And he actually he compiled all of those those theories and
he goes away and he thinks about it, doesn't he?
And then he works them into his next Weeping Angel story. So I do give him credit for that. He's actually in tune with what people are saying about his stories, and he's taking those criticisms, then he's rectifying them in his future stories.
It's not even that. It's not even that. I think you're right. He does rectify and he does sort of snowball ideas, but I think he has a lot of fun with them as well. And I don't think he's ever lost that side to his nature. When Russell T Davies is not even criticised but questioned on stuff, he has a habit of being quite dismissive or just telling people to F off. Moffat never really does that. He's always
Russell never
polite.
used to do that either. He's totally been brainwashed by the
and it's something that
agenda.
And it's something that I've mentioned on this show, many times in terms of how both of them respond to criticism and how different they are. Like, for example, Russell T Davies takes any sort of criticism as a personal insult, whereas Moffat will say things like, "Oh, I'm always hated on in the fandom. I'm called a this and this," but there's sort of a tongue-in-cheek nature to it. He's
very self-facing.
He sees it as
Scots are like that.
He sees it as sort of like coming with the job, and as you say, Dan, he sort of has fun with it. He takes criticisms and he takes all of these things that fans say and sort of plays with them and tries to see them in the most sort of positive way.
Before he was showrunner of Doctor Who, there was no one that was more active. Okay, that's hyperbole. There are few people who were more active on Gallifrey Base, the huge Doctor Who forum, than Stephen Moffat. He was always on there. And I remember when Coupling had ended after about 5 seasons, the sitcom, people were saying, because there was supposed to be more of that, it wasn't supposed to end, there was more. And he used to talk to us. He'd got a whole message board just for us, for Coupling fans. And so we used to talk, all of us used to talk to Stephen Moffat through there all the time. And we said, "Oh, go on, tell us what would have happened in Series 6. Go on. And so he'd tell us, "Oh, well, I was going to do this, I was going to do that." And people were like bouncing ideas. "Oh, yeah, we could have done this." And he said, "Oh, we've just created 6, 7, and 8 seasons of it." He would have fun in a very fanish way. And if you look now, he's creeping back onto Twitter and he's doing it a little there too.
What do you think? And I know it's a total tangent, but since I'm very much appreciating you being on the show, Dan, I want to ask you, what do you think about how Moffat went out, how Capaldi went out, the potential politicking? Because many of us feel like he was forced into including certain quotas and meeting certain
well, Stephen
boxes.
Moffat, yeah. I mean,
Moffat,
from the top in summary, Stephen Moffat, he has spoken about it publicly in the past. I don't think he would.
He's
speak
very,
quite
very
so
hesitant
publicly now
to commit to it. The
problem was
he even answered me, and I got
you have to tell me about it. You have to send me that later on. But the Equality and Diversity Charter came in 2015. They were given forewarning it was coming in. Moffat had to incorporate it, had to tick certain boxes, for want of a better word. He had to tick certain boxes in when he was putting Series 10 together. And whilst I don't think that the character of Bill Potts was conceived for that purpose, it undoubtedly shaped the way the character was written, and other aspects of those episodes, which Stephen Moffat found immensely frustrating.
I bet
it's common knowledge that Moffat had wanted to leave earlier. They kind of had to twist his arm into doing Series 10. He initially was going to leave with Series 9, but with Capaldi still in place, and Moffat was going to go.
Capaldi wanted to do 10 years or something, he said once.
Capaldi had every intention of staying, and they had an option on him. For his contract was up. But they did have an option on him for more, which he was of the belief, because he wanted to remain in the role, whereas Matt Smith hadn't. There was
Smith
allegedly, Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat had a major falling out on the set of Nightmare in Silver, which caused Matt Smith to do something very, very rash. Allegedly. So that's what happened there. Tennant toyed with the idea. Tennant toyed with the idea of staying for Series 5, but ultimately he wanted to go with Russell. But with this, in their heads was Capaldi believed that he was staying. He wanted to stay. Capaldi was told the decision had been made. He wasn't fired. But the decision was made for him that the door was going to close on that. Chris Chibnall took him out to dinner, which I think is public knowledge. I don't have to say allegedly. He took him out to dinner to give him the bad news kind of in person. And I think Pearl Mackie as well, but it was Capaldi. So Capaldi wasn't fired, but if it had been his choice, he would have remained under Chris Chibnall.
I think everybody basically believes that, because we don't believe that Capaldi had any intention of doing anything else. This is the closest, talking to you is the closest I've got to any verification of anything that I believe. But I suspect there's a lot you can't say, so I won't press the issue. What I will ask is, what do you think of this quote from Stephen Moffat about the DEI thing? Where he says we've kind of got to tell a lie, and I'll give you what I think first. We'll go back into history, and there'll be black people where historically there wouldn't have been, and we won't dwell on that. And then he actually says, "We'll say to hell with it. This is the imaginary better version of the world. By believing it, we'll summon it forth." I think this bit right here either got him in trouble, or is just the ultimate tell of how he really feels. And I have hung my channel on it before.
Is there a date on this article, Will?
Yeah, this is right back up to the top, I guess. 2016, 3rd of June.
Comes from 2016 itself. Obviously, it's that. So that was, when was that? So that was the year of the presidential election. It was the year of Brexit.
Right. It's the fact that he says it's a lie, though. These days, you're not allowed. He
wouldn't say that now. He wouldn't say that now. This, at the time, this wouldn't have even been considered to be that candid. I think so. I find that interesting that he uses those words very freely and makes a very honest statement there about why he made the editorial decision that he did. So I miss those days when people would be this transparent. As for the content of what he's saying, I think it's cowardly. I'm a Stephen Moffat fan. I like Stephen as a person, but this is cowardly, and he should. And in my view, I mean, I'd like to think that I would rather walk from a job than just think, we've just got to tell a lie to millions of children who are watching this. No, this is a lie too far. You can't tell lies about history. The creation of the show, to inform,
yes, I know
to
we're
inform
going,
and to entertain. They were so conscientious about both science and history, not to misrepresent it. Moffat is effectively co-signing on misrepresentation here about things that actually happened, about realities of life and of history.
Do you think a Doctor Who fan would do that very happily?
I don't think he did any. I don't think he did any of this happily. And I think that by the time he came to speak about it here in 2016, he'd probably had time to live with it and to think about how he would phrase it. I think he probably got to this place, but it can't be a coincidence that this was. Would he have made this statement if he wasn't aware that he was on his way out of the door at this point? To be honest, probably not. I think he'd have probably kept his mouth shut, and I don't blame him.
I mean,
I think Moffat is someone who saw.
Go on, Goldie. No, you go on, mate.
Okay, I was going to say, as someone who's recently been watching a lot of interviews with Stephen Moffat from recent years, I've come to the conclusion that he's not. I think he's someone who goes along with all this stuff when he needs to, but I don't think it's necessarily what he actually believes, because there was this one interview that he was doing, and I think it was just months ago, and the interviewer, it was a good interview. It was going normally, asking about all the stuff he's written and all the usual stuff, and then this person came out with a question out of nowhere, which was, what do you have to say about you being in the industry as a white privileged male? And you could see he was quite taken aback by that. He was kind of like, we all were, okay, I guess. Yeah, he was like, I guess, everyone should be like treated fairly. Like, I think, and that's the only response he gave. So it's obviously clear that he's not someone who's, deep into
Goldie, for people of Stephen's age and of my age as well. I'm not anywhere near as old as Stephen Moffat, but I'm getting up there. For people of our generation and Moffat's generation, when we speak about things like that and give an answer of that in that mould, the reason why we sometimes stumble our words and seem like we're unsure of what we're saying is because for so long stuff like that didn't even need saying. It was of course I believe in equality, right? Of course I believe in that people shouldn't be persecuted for it just never needed saying. And so Moffat can't quite believe that he's having to say these things because he's never had to before, and he's a man of 60 years. It's because culture and dialogue and communication has changed. It's been co-opted by far leftists, by stooges and by grifters and by people who are pushing certain ideologies. And Moffat knows it, but he feels it. He knows it's wrong as the words are leaving his lips.
Right.
And that's why I trouble for saying certain things, like I don't believe that he actually buys into any of this shit. And then he actually was sort of urged by some leftist on Twitter to respond to me, and then he gave like a lip service response that kind of shot down my argument, but didn't really commit to shooting down my argument. And then another channel kind of attacked me and blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that. But I still don't believe for a fucking second that Moffat actually is a card-carrying, die-hard true
Stephen Moffat still believes this show Doctor Who, should be unifying people, not dividing them.
Yes. And that's all
he wouldn't target you to make an example of you. He'd probably give you an honest answer. And I believe that he is left wing, but he's more. I believe him to be more centre left.
Yeah, of course. He's a centre left. Yeah, he's more about sort of having a go at the church or whatever, rather than having a go at there are two genders. There's
loads of stuff I disagree with Moffat on, but I think he'd be happy to agree to disagree. Whereas a great many people aren't.
As a child, from infancy, I was surrounded by people who were 40 and 50 years old, thanks to my parents and the jazz world that my dad was working in at the time. So I was constantly surrounded by people who were older and I learned to sort of talk to everybody of every possible age group, whatever, all the way through my life. And I started to see that there was always a certain holdover from one generation to the next of beliefs and practices and stuff, that then this generation comes along and wants to shit on all of them. And then someone tries to tell me that Stephen Moffat, who by that point was like 50, is going to turn around and say, yeah, we there were black people in the 1500s. Absolutely. No. I don't believe it.
That's the thing, though, about this statement that's actually being stated, though, is all right. So, like,
you get like Dan was saying, when you get bombarded with that, like someone's requesting that you abandon common sense, as has been for your entire life of 4 or 5 decades, to answer this politically correct question. But the political correctness is no longer just about, dancing around a few people's fifis. Now you're having to argue against common sense. I don't believe that.
But that's the whole entertainment industry.
This statement was made in 2016, and so like this is like the introduction of the reality that we are now living in, where the actual kind of way that we go about doing things. Not that I think anybody here personally does it, but as society, it is very much we can brute force lies into the truth.
See, and that's why John. That Stephen shouldn't have ceded this ground. He shouldn't have sat
right
with this
and he says the initial statement, which is the truth, that like I'm being kind of forced into this without having to say that. But I also think that at the time, he was being as diplomatic as he could to try to
and now John, 8 years on, Goldie's hearing this and reading back on it and instantly knows the right from wrong of it, because human beings largely do, particularly if we've been raised well
for thousands of years. We thought the right from wrong.
I think that the bigger issue is that entertainment was always with a lot of moderate lefts, and generally speaking, it wasn't as annoying, even if they had whatever messaging or whatever. It was just something mild. And these days they've become so extreme, and the position is such an extreme left position that it really alienates audiences. And I think that what Stephen Moffat is saying here, we can really see the change, even though he can't really admit it.
Right.
He blinked.
Right.
I think for
Exactly.
what I'm basically trying to say, and I'm kind of glad that it seems like we all agree, of course, as always, I don't believe that he is a even half believer in this ideology, and he just had to do what he had to do for his job. And
we have a name for them: useful idiots who blink.
Stooges, I suppose. I have by the way, I really love and respect Moffat's work, so I no disrespect to him ever from me. But it was a bad situation. I guess he did what he had to do, and that's the stance I'll probably
he
always
couldn't possibly have foreseen where things would go. Even somebody like
No
Stephen
one
Moffat,
could.
who I think that people would struggle to believe it, and I think he's got a better grasp of the fandom and earlier on we talked about social media. I think he understands social media better than Russell does.
Right.
But
he
still
does,
a man,
because he never ever fucking uses it. That's why he says one thing a year on social media. That's understanding social media when you're a public figure. Congrats.
Very wise. Class act.
But that's the thing, is we now live in full-blown clown world. This is like people were putting on clown shoes in 2016, and now it's full-blown makeup, everything like that. And it's just
several years.
Now if you actually speak honestly or about things with factual basis, that's where the attack comes from. You have to,
I think Moffat knows the right balance between the political messaging and actual proper storytelling in Doctor Who. I mean, me and Will both very much loved it. I think maybe I loved it a bit more than Will, but I think we both said that we really loved Boom, because that is the first episode in 7 years where I watched an episode of Doctor Who and came away from it going, that's a Doctor Who episode. Like, it may not be prime Doctor Who, which I don't think
it was exactly, a Doctor Who episode. That's it. There were no other Doctor Who episodes in this last series of Doctor Who. There was only one, and it was Boom. It wasn't the best, but it was a Doctor Who episode.
Well, Will, if you'd have seen somebody like at work, like a couple of days later, or at the shop or whatever, and they say, "I see Doctor Who the other night," and you say, "Yeah, well, what? Oh, I missed it. What was it about?" you'd be able to say, "Oh, it was about this, that." No, and they'd go, "Oh, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It's the only one. It was
Someone
fit for
asked me
purpose."
what, for example, if someone said, "Did you see Doctor Who the other night?" and I said, "Yeah," and the last episode had been Rogue, and someone said, "What was that episode about?" I would have said, "Well, the Doctor abandons his companion, spends the entire episode ignoring dead bodies and chasing
to go cruising for ass."
At one point, front twerks to Kylie Minogue, who is also an established character in the fucking show as Astrid Peth. And then he gets off with him while his assistant is standing facing her own doom. And then some shit happens and the episode ended. All I remember is the stuff that offended me. That's it. And it didn't even necessarily offend me because it was gay. I mean, I don't want to see that shit. I'm straight. But it was because it ain't the Doctor. It was a complete abandonment.
Completely different character.
Care that Capaldi was talking about, you know.
Well, like I said,
anyway,
he's the
I
dictator.
think we need to wrap this episode up, gentlemen. I would do this for another hour happily, but I do have other things I got to get to, and this is a 2-hour show, so I'm really sorry to everybody. Dan, absolute fucking pleasure to have you on, man. Like, you're very
the pleasure's mine. Thank you for your company and for indulging.
You're indulging us, mate. Trust me.
Yeah.
Would you like to give your outro before I have the rest of the...
And my outro? God, that sounds good. I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. And you can find me rambling on some more about Doctor Who twice a week, completely live on Type 40 Live. They're on the Type 40 Doctor Who channel and the Type 40 podcast across all major podcatchers there, with a mix of news, reviews, interviews, previews, geek outs and deep dives. Some live events coming soon as well. So you might have seen us at Hooverville a few weeks ago there in Derby. And in about 3 weeks' time, myself and Simon will be in Lichfield with Phil Ford, the co-writer of The Waters of Mars too. So you can meet us in real life if you're brave enough. But otherwise, it's Mondays and Thursdays from 8 p.m. talking Doctor Who on Type 40 Live. Thank you. And I've had some of these guys on the show. We've had Goldie on several times, and Ryan, where's Ryan? Well, Ryan's moved. People have moved around. And Ryan as well. And I certainly recognise Price of Reason. But there's lots of people do pop up there as well, from not just from YouTube, but from podcasting as well. So yeah, we've got a good, robust set of panels there, and always plenty to talk about. So but yeah, it's been lovely to spend the last couple of hours speaking with you guys in such a robust way and talking about things which are the good, the bad, and the ugly. So yeah, cheers again. Thanks, Will.
Dan, the most brave thing isn't having people come to meet you at a meetup; it's having Ryan on your show.
Yeah,
yes, my heart is in my mouth every single time. Actually, because I've got a second channel where I talk about movies and telly as well, and so Ryan was good enough to come on a couple of weeks ago. He was barely pressed and barely cognizant.
I gotta get on there sometime. All right, super. Right before we do the rest of our outros, I just want to pay a little bit of attention to our mod TJab Steve, who has gifted $5 for a super chat. Thank you. Anyone else practicing blinking one eye at a time, just in case? after watching Blink. I think I did that for like an hour.
That's the sort of thing my kids would have probably been doing that around the time.
Yeah, you just sort of check in that you can do it just in case you ever find out you need to. Yeah. Going on from there, TJab Steve then gifted 5 Will of the Fans memberships, and thank you very, very much, you lucky people. Followed closely by Eros Rhoda doing the exact same thing. 5 more Will of the Fans memberships, and thank you everybody. More green for Princess of the Fans for me to buy nappies and formula. Love it. This is the gimmick, Dad. This is the gimmick, and it's working. I like it. Whatever, man. They all like to buy gifts for my daughter, and that I am never going to say no to. Thank you very much. All right. It's time for our outros. We're all discombobulating in the wrong order, but let's start with John. Do you want to give your plugging of shit? Thank you, mate.
Yeah. So Old White Road later today with Ryan Roger Thay, obviously. As I've become fully reality based, and I'm now like I guess I'm the regeneration of Dobby.
Yeah.
So 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 like you can see me basically on Will of the Fans channel and Reality Based throughout the week. Other than that, usually on late Sunday night I do a Stupenzo cast where I just play video game, or we play not video games, but we play like silly YouTube games, and we just kind of like make fun of each other and whatnot. And then tomorrow I will be on Countercast with Leon from Words of Paradise, and then we'll be back again together on Tuesday, so I'll be able to tell more of my other stuff that's going on between now and then and whatever. So yeah,
lovely. Thanks, mate. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your first appearance on WhoTF Live, and most welcome regular panelists going forward. We miss you, Rev, but I needed someone to be on the show, so no hard feelings. Goldie, would you like to say something?
Well, this has been a great stream having Dan on. It's been great. As for me, I put out a video a few hours ago on the whole shooting out to a situation, so you can go and see that. I've got into a rhythm of releasing more videos frequently now, so I'm going to be talking about all things Doctor Who, and I'm going to be reviewing The Penguin, because I absolutely love that show. It's phenomenal. So I'm definitely going to be reviewing episodes of that. And I actually look forward to it. I've reviewed the first 2 episodes. I'm going to review episode 3. I'm going to be able to watch episode 4 tomorrow, so I'm going to be reviewing those. And I'll find something else Doctor Who related to talk about. What I'm going to try and do is read some of the Target novels and try and do comparisons between the novels and the actual episodes and see how they differ, and the good and bad from each.
You're talking about my childhood there, Goldie.
Nice.
So yeah, that's just for me, and I'll be back here next Sunday.
Beautiful. Price of Reason, you're up, sir.
Anybody watching can subscribe to Price of Reason for my regular videos and Price of Reason Live for my live streams. That's it, I guess. And always a pleasure to be here, of course. And also great streaming also with John, who I've interacted with quite a few times, but this is my first time on a stream with. And same with Dan. We know a lot of mutual people. I feel like our paths have crossed. Yes, many times, but this is the first time.
I've never heard your voice before, and yet I've been connected to you now for several years.
Right.
So in all sincerity, it really is lovely to speak to you at last.
Same. And hopefully my voice didn't disappoint.
And they say we're all full of hate. They say my voice always disappoints, but they say we're all haters and we should stop hating everything. But isn't this just a lovely circle of love?
For sure.
Anyway, Ryan, you're up, mate.
Well, folks, thank you all very much for watching the 26th episode of WhoTF Live. Always a pleasure, as always. Yes, the debut episode of reality-based Old White Road will be live at 9 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern. We have Bishop's opening and Abomination AJ joining a stellar cast of me and a good chunk of regulars. So it's going to be one hell of a crazy show. Old White Road is the complete opposite of Atreus and Kaida's new show.
It sounds like an aftershave, Ryan. What on earth are you doing?
It was inspired.
I fucking love that.
Dan?
They've got a show called New Black Street, so he's got Old White Road.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it was right when I stumbled into the door too, because like problematic white guy, like it fell into place. So.
So you got reality-based Old White Road. I mean, the intro for it is inspired by Old Town Road. I think people are going to really enjoy
I'm intrigued.
It.
I'm intrigued, Ryan. I can't wait to see whatever it is you're talking about.
So hopefully we'll have a great show. I've made a few videos for today, and hopefully I can try my best to keep on going and keep on growing. As for the show after that, I don't have anything planned on my channel until next Friday with reality-based Tangent Kings. That's a show I took from Dragon Slayer because he's too lazy to do his own show. And if Will ever retires WhoTF Live, do be sure to check out reality-based Whovians, which is my variant of this show. So thank you all very much.
1 episode and counting.
Yep. It was great, though. It was great.
Yeah, it was all right.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to having more shows. I'm looking forward to debut reality-based All Blacks, reality-based women, reality-based Jews, just anything with reality-based.
Reality-based shoes, reality-based shirts, reality-based steak, reality-based white meat, reality-based red meat, reality-based sausages.
Yep.
Fucking hell.
Yep.
All right. I've had enough. Thank you, everybody in the chat, first of all, for sticking with us all this time, and special thanks to the mod. Sonia Lizette is here. That doesn't happen every day, folks. So I hope you've been enjoying her luscious presence. And Sonia, I hope you're doing well. Eris Rhoda, of course, thank you very much as well for obviously the 5 memberships, and TJab Steve for the 2 super chats and the gifted memberships, and for being a mod. Thank you to the members for showing up, and everybody else who was lurking or chatting or whatever the hell you've been doing. Thank you to the guests. Thank you. Special thanks to Dan, who blew my mind a couple of times during this show. I'd love to talk to you some more in future episodes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome, sir. I'm going to get this stream demonetized right now as I prepare for the outro. So nothing left to do except wave stupidly to the camera and say, see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye. Bye.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Wash? Well, you can't have it. Because this isn't for boys. It's for men. This is Dr. Squatch Natural Body Wash. With long-lasting natural aromas like wood barrel bourbon, pine tar, coconut castaway, and fresh falls, you'll finally get the attention you deserve. So go to drsquatch.com today and quit being a dirty little